Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live. It is Monday, June 8th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I know it's been a few days. It's really been one day, though. We only missed Friday. Realistically, it's been one day. I know I didn't do futures last night. We'll talk about that. But we're here. We're live. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. And, we have to recap a lot of the events that happened on Friday because those events on Friday were quite traumatizing to an extent, even though it was just a little 5% pullback. Wasn't that big of a deal. Although the last time we had a 5% pullback on the NASDAQ was April of 2025, so it felt like a big deal. But we're rebounding pre-market, which I guess is important. And we'll talk about why we're getting a bit of a rebound in the pre-market. We will talk about that. S&P 500 right there up almost 1%. But we got a lot to get into. Lots of geopolitical stuff happened over the weekend and lots of stuff to analyze in the context of, I guess, how this week is going to play out. This week, we do have one of the most monumental things happening in the history of the stock market, which is the largest IPO, SpaceX, on Friday. I believe it's Friday, right? I don't think it's Thursday. I think it's Friday. So that's going to be really big. We're going to see how much liquidity is able to acquire that SpaceX IPO and also what impact it has on the rest of the market, along with, whatever geopolitical implications that could also have on the market once we get that SpaceX IPO. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Iran and Israel updates that happened from last night. They are kind of back at war, kind of not back at war. And I don't know if the market's going to believe some of the stuff that Trump said in the morning. I think we're green for a specific reason. It's a Trump tweet. If we didn't have that tweet, I think we would be red based on some of the action we saw last night. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll get into all the different earnings that we have to look at going into this week. I am a little sick. So what happened on Friday? I woke up late on Friday. That's why I missed the show. I was in a different time zone and I slept really late. And by the time I woke up, I was just like, okay, there's no way I could do the show. So I literally woke up at 10:30 a.m., which is, a couple hours after we usually do the show. And I just woke up, and what did I look like? Where's that meme that I looked like? Yeah, this was me. This was me as soon as I woke up. I was like, oh, a little bit of a ready day, red day. I was not hungover. No, I didn't even drink. I just genuinely, I think, and then so I got sick when I came home Friday night. By the way, 2-0 on the Knicks. The Starlink Wi-Fi on the United Airlines was good enough for me to keep up with the score. So while we were landing into Newark, I got to see the Knicks get that 2-0 lead. And we were up 14, so I was like, oh, we're definitely going to win. And then I refreshed the thing, and it takes like 5 minutes to refresh. And then we're down by 2. I'm like, oh, my goodness, we might lose this game. But we ended up winning. But I got home late at night, and then Saturday I woke up and I was sick. And I'm still kind of sick right now, which is why I didn't do the futures last night. So, I think it was just a lot of traveling, a lot of exhaustion. AIPCon is quite a journey. There's a lot of stuff to do, a lot of work to get done. Lots of stuff just running back and forth. And so I tried to rest over the past couple of days. I think I'm getting a lot better. My voice is still a little stuffy, but I've been keeping up with everything going on in the markets. And it killed me to not be live on Friday because that was one of those days. I wanted to do the market close too, but I had a flight, so I literally couldn't do it. But I was watching it go down, and oh boy, was it ugly. Oh boy, was it ugly. But it also feels kind of fake now that we're seeing the pre-market action. So I think there's a lot to dive into in terms of what's real, what's not real. Was that sell-off like just a one-off event that we needed to have to kind of take a little bit of a breather, or was that the start of something much broader? And I think there's a couple of different implications to kind of talk about how it's going to play out, and we'll keep going from there. All right, he says we while thinking Cat Williams is on the team. Dude, the Knicks are they're legit proving. I mean, I think it's inevitable now that we win the championship. I don't know if it's going to be a sweep, but the energy at Madison Square Garden tonight, it's going to be crazy. I kind of wish I'd bought the tickets now when they were $4,000 because now the cheapest ticket is $15,000. I was like, man, I could have flipped it and made 3x my money. But I will not be attending the game. I will be watching tonight though, and I think it's inevitable that this championship is ours. I don't know if it's going to take 4 or 5 or 6 games, but it is pretty exciting to be a Knicks fan and see what they're doing. So, all right, let's get into it. Thank you everybody for being here. We got a lot to talk about. Jensen is in South Korea, and he's been putting out a lot of quotes over the weekend as well, which is affecting some of these stocks. And so we'll get into all that as we get through the show. So first off, let's start off with Iran and Israel last night. So last night, futures opened red, and they went even more red when Iran officially attacked Israel for the first time since April, since the initial beginnings of the ceasefire. Now, why was there a ceasefire? Well, Iran launched the missiles, or why was there a violation of the ceasefire? Iran launched missiles towards Israel on Sunday, marking the first direct attack on Israel since April. The strike came hours after Israel bombed Hezbollah headquarters in southern Beirut. So, AKA, this was a reason to attack them based on Israel's attack on Lebanon, which has led to a lot of speculation over the past couple of weeks, because we were very close to a deal. We had that Axios headline that took the S&P well past 7,600. I think it was last Tuesday on negotiations are set in stone. We're ready. There's only a little bit of stuff to argue about when it comes to uranium enrichment, but we're good to go. And then, a couple days later, we had these Israeli attacks, and you could tell Trump was a little pissed. And Trump was pissed last night. He said he called Netanyahu, told him to not fire back. Israel did indeed fire back last night. However, this morning, the reason we are going green is because Iran has apparently said they are not going to attack the attack that they got as a response to the initial attack. The details here: IRGC warned that any further strikes by Israel in Iran or Lebanon would trigger a far stronger or more forceful response. The move comes an hour after Trump said Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting. Trump also announced that both sides, Israel and Iran, are looking to do an immediate ceasefire. That's what he tweeted about 2 hours ago, which got the market to be a bit more excited about this potential ceasefire. And that's why we're pumping right now. It's like we had a ceasefire back in April. We pumped. We had multiple potential deals. They all fell through, but we got a new ceasefire today. Trump: final negotiations on peace are proceeding subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in its way. The blockade will remain in place and in full force and effect until a final deal is reached. Things should move quickly. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And that was enough to get the markets to rebound. So here's my question to everybody. Put a poll right there in the chat. Do you think this pre-market bounce, and there's a couple other core headlines for why we're getting this pre-market bounce outside of the ceasefire, although I think the ceasefire is kind of the primary reason, and we'll talk about the jobs report on Friday because that was obviously part of the catalyst for the sell-off. Do we think this pre-market bounce will last? Is this real? Because we've seen this type of a bounce after a very nasty sell-off happen, maybe not as many times in 2026, but multiple times in 2025, and usually it was faded. And it would take a couple days for the market to kind of rebound. S&P would have to recover almost 3%. We're basically 33% of the way there because we're up 1% of the pre-market, almost 1%. So theoretically, is it crazy to think that we rebound in a couple days? It's not that crazy. But then again, if this is a pre-market pump fake and we end up getting a drawdown as soon as the market opens based on a variety of different corresponding factors, then maybe that sell-off on Friday was a signal of something greater. But if we have a ceasefire, I mean, who knows? Maybe it doesn't have to be that bad. Micron up 7.6%. We'll talk about what's going on with memory. Marvell got added to the S&P 500. This stock went from 330 to 258 on Friday. And now it's back at 286 because of the S&P 500 inclusion. So you talk about volatile. This one's been in the midst of it. NVIDIA went from 220 all the way down to almost 203 on Friday. Now it's at 210. Broadcom kind of started the issue. They didn't increase their guidance for fiscal year 2027. And that's when the street, I think, really got upset, even though, they're sandbagging and obviously they have to maintain expectations. But that took the stock down from 480 down to about 420. Then it fell another 7% on Friday at 385. Now it's up about 3.3%, 398. So this one's going to be interesting to see as well if this one can move forward or if this one kind of stays flat in that range. That's at Rocket Lab, that's up 4%. Robinhood, that's up 3%. So a lot of these names getting the rebound after they had some really ugly drawdowns. Keel, they did an offering, which I think is actually very strategic for them at this stage, especially if they're going to close a couple more deals. They fell 14%. They're up 5% the pre-market. I mean, you got a lot of these names that got hit. Even Navitas, they filed for a mixed shelf offering today. They were down 18% on Friday. They're up 5% today after announcing dilution. So it's kind of incredible to see how resilient some of these names are in the midst of the sell-off on Friday. And it's leading me to believe maybe today is a chance to, if not fully recover, at least somewhat recover, which at least stops the bleeding, which is what I think most people care about, versus getting a full recovery. Corning, the reason that stock is up is because of a partnership with Amazon. That's up 9.5%, was down 10% on Friday. So this is something Jason and I both talked about. If you look at the earnings call on Corning last quarter, they announced, I believe it was a $6 billion deal with Meta. In that exact earnings call, the CEO said we have 2 more deals that are worth as much, if not worth more, in the tens of billions with other hyperscalers. So they already said we have more deals in the pipeline. Amazon deal announced today makes sense. Amazon going to be working with Corning for fiber optics, announces agreement with Corning to boost U.S. fiber optics manufacturing, creating 1,000 advanced manufacturing jobs in North Carolina. It is a multi-billion-dollar pact. We don't know exactly how much it's worth, but that is your second of the 3 deals that Corning has already signaled. Again, NVIDIA also invested in them at around 160, and that's why that stock's up 9%. So it helps that the broader market's a little bit more bullish in the pre-market, but if you get that type of a hyperscaler deal, which in this market, if you get a hyperscaler deal, you have a chance to go a lot higher. And that's why Corning is green. So that's what we got with Iran and the US. Again, I think everyone's getting tired of it. It's been much longer than the allotted time that we had for this war to come to an end. Oil is also not loving it. I mean, we're still at 91.72 now. We're not passing 100, so I think the street has kind of moved on from the idea that this war is going to last forever, although we're not getting any meaningful signals for negotiating so that oil could come down even below that. And that leads into the conversation on Friday. So oil's up, inflation's up. We get CPI, PPI this week. That's going to be super important, along with the SpaceX IPO. So we've got a lot of macro data this week to look at. But what happened on Friday that crashed the markets? And it's kind of crazy that this crashed the markets if this was the actual reason. But we had a new jobs report. And that jobs report on Friday, non-farm payrolls, apparently was so good that it led to a sell-off. Because the argument was we have so many jobs. Remember, the initial narrative was that AI is going to take away our jobs. So we need to be afraid of, the amount of jobs that we have that are out there. And now the argument is we are having so many jobs, if you believe in that data, that because we added 172,000 jobs in the month of May, way higher than expectations, we're going to have so much inflation. And because we're going to have so much inflation, the market's going to sell off. Which... Well, the reason the market would sell off is because we wouldn't cut rates. And so the rate hike probabilities went up. We are actually pricing in a rate cut for the end of this year, which I don't think is going to happen. But we did indeed. I mean, future Fed probabilities did that. And as a result of that, the S&P fell 3%. My take on this is that I think this is a little misconstrued in a variety of ways. First of all, if these jobs are legit, meaning these jobs are actually supposed to be the jobs that meaningfully allow us to assume that AI is being productive on the economy, then yeah, there might be some inflationary impact. But I think the natural hedge of deflation that's going to be happening over time because of products and goods and services becoming cheaper, productivity going up, et cetera. If that doesn't affect the labor market, that's going to affect everything else. So even if we don't see massive job reduction in the labor market, which would be the natural deflationary hedge for all of society via AI, but we see it in other places, then just because the labor market is strong, which we should be happy it's strong because that means AI is actually carrying out the promise of mass abundance, et cetera, then that's not a reason for the market to sell off. Like if you have more earnings growth, the stocks inevitably go up. I mean, that has been the literal story of 2026, right? Earnings growth is what keeps the expectations at bay, which allows the market to kind of reprice these stocks to go even higher. And that's why I think Micron dip is getting bought pretty easily. I mean, as it fell to 864 on Friday, down 13%, the PE collapsed. And as the earnings expectations goes up and the PE collapses, the market obviously gets pretty excited about it. The second argument here is, let's say we are having too many jobs or let's say these jobs are fake. Then that means we shouldn't have stocks going down. So for example, if the jobs are real, then that means we're going to have deflation in other areas, which means we should be able to handle some of the inflation from the labor market. And I do think Trump is right about this. Like a good jobs report means stocks should go up, not down, based on this like academic macroeconomic idea that good news is bad news, right? Although it's like somewhat realistic, it's also kind of dumb in the broad scheme of things, given how many things will go down. But let's say all these jobs are fake. Let's say these jobs are, part-time jobs that people are getting hired for on the World Cup or things like that. Like these payrolls, we don't even know if these payrolls are actually legit, especially because in 2025, we revised all of our payrolls down by 1 million jobs. So we won't know for another 6 months if these jobs are actually real, just like we don't know if these jolts are real. So if the market's going to be reacting to this as like, we have so many jobs, we have so much inflation, it's runaway inflation, we have to sell off everything because we're going to have massive rate hikes, to me, it just feels like an overreaction. And as a result of that, I think this dip ends up getting bought. Having said that, the actual reason I think we fell on Friday outside of the jobs report is simply because there's a lot of leverage in the system. And South Korea, the Kospi index was down about 8% yesterday. Now, the reason that was down was more so because it was reacting to our markets, not necessarily because there were bad things around Samsung and SK Hynix, and we'll talk about that. Jensen said a bunch of things about that over the weekend. But in general, I don't think having a ton of jobs is enough of a reason to have a sell-off. I think the margin, the leverage, and the amount of retail exuberance. I mean, if you bought Marvell at, I don't know, 220, and you saw it go to 330, and then it came all the way down to 250, you might have just sold at 260, 270 on Friday, saying, you know what, let me at least protect some gains, because if we are going down, I want to at least protect the profits that I have, especially because I got in on the story late. Because if you bought Marvell, you bought it after a 2x, even if you bought it at 220. And so you might be thinking, look, I've overstayed my welcome. The market's turning negative. I need to sell. And that could have been the wrong decision if we have like a meaningful rebound. But the point is, it was a decision that I think a lot of people, I'm sure plenty of people in the chat kind of took some precedence for that decision on Friday. I was like, you know what, screw it. Like, I'm up a ton on Micron. If you bought it at even 500, 600, seeing your gains get wiped out by 13% in a day could be really scary. You might just want to take some profits, which I think is we saw that sell-off on Friday. So that's the major reason I think we saw the sell-off. I don't think it was the jobs report. I think the jobs report was a scapegoat to be able to say this is why we're selling off, when in reality, I don't think Kevin Warsh is going to raise rates, and I definitely don't think he's going to raise rates because of the labor market. If you've listened to anything in terms of how he talks, that's just like not his mentality. I know it's not just him. He has people he has to convince, but yeah, I think the leverage and the fact that we needed a breather, right? We were going vertical and we had a breather. That breather happened all at once. Maybe that we had a pretty ugly 4% drawdown all at once. That was enough, I think, for the market to start panicking and get a little bit more pain. Having said that, the other real reason I think we had a little bit more pain. Oh, do we got an Intel headline? We have an Intel headline. See, these headlines around the CapEx build out is part of the reason it's really hard to be like, oh, the jobs report is why the market's going to crash. It's like, hold on, something much bigger is happening here. Google secured Intel to manufacture over 3 million AI chips for 2028 production. NVIDIA is testing Intel's 18A process and advanced packaging for future GPU architectures. Wow. Oh my. So not only does Intel have Elon's blessing, not only are they working with SpaceX, not only is the White House invested in them, Google and NVIDIA both tapping Intel potentially to be able to work on either advanced packaging or manufacturing for new chips. There you go. Intel up 10%. There's a lot of those headlines that happened over the past 48 hours as well that we'll talk about. But this, the Corning partnership, I mean, you've got multiple different routes to how this CapEx continues to go higher into a new paradigm that we are in when it comes to the AI build out. And that's why Intel goes green. Is Google up on this? Google is slightly flat on this. Okay, so the other reason I think we were down on Friday was because of Meta. Meta picked the worst time to have this rumor leak, and I know they didn't officially put this out, but nonetheless, you still got to blame them at the end of the day because it is their company. The rumor from the Financial Times was that Meta is getting ready to do an equity raise just like Google, which was surprising to me because I know Microsoft and Amazon are probably going to do it. It's inevitable that Microsoft and Amazon are going to do it. Amazon up 1.26%. Amazon, by the way, losing the entire earnings pump over the past 30 days, 277 back down to 249. And then you have Microsoft, that, you know, that headwind continues to persist. And then Microsoft's actually red in the pre-market as some of the other Mac 7s are green, down about 0.5%. But Meta is not really building AI infrastructure for businesses. They don't need as much, from my understanding, construction of data centers, because they're not building out massive levels of infrastructure to support all these other businesses. They're building GPUs that they're using internally, unless they have very, very big plans to expand, you know, the amount of AI progress they're having and things of that nature. And so the fact that it leaked, I think this was around 2 p.m. on Friday, when things were red, things were kind of bouncing a little bit. It was like, okay, maybe the bleeding has stopped. Then that Meta headline came out, Meta fell 5%. And it became obvious that the big tech companies are not going to let cheap capital go to waste. And if they can get cheap capital just by issuing shares, I mean, Google, again, revised their offering by $5 billion because they had that much excitement and demand for their offering. Now, Google's at all-time highs. Meta's not at all-time highs. So it's a little annoying that Meta's thinking of doing this, and we don't officially know if they're going to do this. But if they are doing this at these depressed levels, it's basically a middle finger from Zucks to shareholders saying, look, I'm happy you guys are on the ride, but this is my company. I own all the shares. And if I want to dilute some more shares, you can either choose to buy it or you can leave. And you kind of have to, you know, believe in Zuck's vision at that point. And I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't think it's a thesis breaker for Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Google. Obviously, if Microsoft and Amazon did it, they are also not at all-time highs. So maybe Zucks is thinking, well, Amazon and Microsoft are going to have to do this at 30, 40% below their all-time high. So I should be able to do it as well, even if we're not at 750, which is fair. But the broader question is going to be, will these equity raises be productive and successful like Google's was? And if it is, then the big tech companies just found another way to make more money. And so, again, I don't think there's something you can say that would stop the big tech companies from doing what they're doing. Intel, right there, 111, that's up now 12% pre-market. But it is important to understand we're in a new paradigm when it comes to funding the AI build-out. And that, along with the sort of leverage that was insulated within the broader markets on Friday, I think is why we fell. I really think that Meta deal was the actual reason we started really falling off a cliff on Friday, because everyone just realized, which technically should be bullish for Marvell and Corning and Micron. Like, all those companies should get a boost if Meta is saying we're going to dilute more capex. It's bad for Meta, but it was just not good news on a Friday where everything was already red, and we ended up going down even more. Yeah, Vertiv, that's rebounding 3.5% pre-market. I mean, a lot of these AI semiconductor capex names that got hit. Cerebras up 6%. Cerebras, I haven't done sort of a valuation breakdown on this. They got a new price target today by JP Morgan at 340. They definitely look a lot more attractive at 200 or 215 than they did, at 380 on the IPO day. So a lot of these names have just got potentially re-rated to the downside. CoreWeave looks a lot more attractive than it did a couple weeks ago, now at 103, 3.5%. Nebius had a new partnership today with the UK. We'll talk about that. Nebius right there up 5%, but Nebius fell all the way down to 220 on Friday, down 12%. So a lot of these names that got hit pretty bad, you have new announcements, you have new partnerships, a couple days later, and boom, Credo, which took a nasty hit after earnings, that's up 5%. They're getting a rebound. The question is, will this rebound last meaningfully going into market open? And I don't know if that's exactly going to take place. By the way, fear and greed, it wasn't really a euphoric-based sell-off because we're at fear. We're literally at fear, The fact that we're at fear is kind of incredible, because you would think that, things are getting toppy. We got to start deciding to take profits, yada, yada. I mean, maybe that lasted for like a day on Friday, but once we get into fear, extreme fear, you start to tend to see buyers come in pretty aggressively. And if that happens, maybe that was only a ugly Friday that was isolated to that Friday. Wix is down 12%. The reason VIX is down, honestly, this was kind of obvious when I saw the reason, but so quote, the company expects an approximately 50 million reduction in bookings and an approximate 25 million reduction in revenue in fiscal year 2026 as a result of our organizational realignment, as well as more pronounced slowdown beyond our previous expectations and the growth of our partners' business during the second half of May and early June. Let me translate. People are going to Claude to make websites instead of coming to us. I think that's the actual reason here. Now, they said the layoffs can offset some of the cost savings from the reduction in growth, but if they're seeing a slowdown in growth, it's because people are not using base 44 as much as they would be using Claude or Codex. So, yeah, fundamentals on this company are very strong. The problem is, we talk about AI commoditizing software. If this is not something that could be commoditized, I don't know what. People are complaining ServiceNow is going to be commoditized. Wix is literally a website builder. I mean, I've built like 7 websites in the past couple of weeks, and it's all on Claude pretty easily. Intel right there at 14%. So I don't know. Maybe this dip ends up getting bought today. It is trading at an incredibly cheap valuation. The question is, future growth prospects, which is what the street's going to have to figure out. See if the market cares more deeply about buying the dip on this. All right, let's talk about memory. Let's talk about memory. Again, Intel partnership with Google and NVIDIA pre-market. That's why that stock is green, up about 12%. Let's talk about memory. So Jensen went to South Korea after going to Computex at Taiwan, or in Taiwan. And boy, did he come to pump it up in South Korea. So NVIDIA and SK Hynix announced a massive partnership. And that partnership is, I think, what got the memory names like a Micron getting a lot of love. Essentially, SK Hynix will co-develop memory for 4 specific NVIDIA platforms. These are brand new platforms that SK Hynix will be developing memory for. Vera Rubin AI supercomputers, Vera CPUs, RTX Spark powered PCs, and Jetson Thor robotic computing platforms. SK Hynix will apply AI to semiconductor chip design and manufacturing itself using NVIDIA's CUDA-X libraries. SK Hynix will build factory digital twins using NVIDIA Omniverse, targeting fully autonomous fab operations. And Jensen said AI factories are the engines of the next industrial revolution, and advanced memory is essential to their performance. So basically, Jensen is giving a lot of endorsement to the memory companies and saying we need a lot more of the memory names that are out there. And as a result, you're seeing more and more memory get used, or at least be perceived as being used by the sell side, which is why these price targets are going up. This was Jensen a couple days ago in South Korea, and here's what he said.
Okay, are you listening? Yeah. Okay, I came to Korea because business is booming. Business is booming. Booming. Bang. Like PC bang. Bang. Okay? Business is booming. And Korea is doing very well. And Korea, my partners here in Korea, very important to me. So I came to Korea to thank them, to celebrate with them, and to congratulate them for such an incredible year. You're welcome. My friends here had a very good year. But this is just the beginning. As you know, NVIDIA introduced 4 new products this week. Rubin is the next generation for AI supercomputers. Rubin will use a lot of HBM, a lot of LPDDR. Number 2, we introduced a brand new CPU called Vera. Vera is revolutionary. And this CPU will use a lot of memory, LPDDR5. Number 3, we introduced the first new invention of the PC in 40 years called RTX Spark. We're going to revolutionize the PC, reinvent it, a brand new time, a brand new line. We call it RTX Spark. RTX Spark needs a lot of memory. LPDDR5, a lot of memory. And then one more thing, NVIDIA introduced a brand new line of robotics processors for self-driving cars. We have a big partnership with Hyundai. For robotics, we have a big partnership with Hyundai. So all of my friends, also with LG, all of my friends, SK Hynix, Samsung, LG, Hyundai, Naver, we are all booming. And so I came to congratulate them for their big partnership. They're doing such a good job. I'm very happy their business is going so well. I am so happy their stock price is so high. I am so happy the economy in Korea is doing so well.
Okay, so that's what you got from Mr. Jensen. Obviously a massive endorsement of the memory companies, and that is why Micron went up yesterday. That video came out late last night. SK Hynix recovered. It was down 10%. The Kospi ended up falling 8%, but that was more of a reaction to the markets in the United States from Friday, and I think those will end up recovering, especially if the broader markets in the U.S. recover. You're up about 13% right here on Intel. But the reason I think Micron went up yesterday is because Jensen's basically saying, look, we need a lot of memory in the future. We have a lot of products that are going to need a lot of memory. And I mean, implicitly, he's making the argument that the memory stock should continue to do well if we need as much memory as we need, assuming that the AI demand does not sell off anytime soon. Jensen also did say it is a good time to buy AI stocks because they're cheap. Someone asked him about the sell-off on Friday, and his exact quote was, AI-related stocks are cheap right now. And this is an opportunity. The AI build-out has just begun. I will say I don't love Jensen so explicitly talking about stock prices as much as he is. He's been doing it a lot recently, and it's just one of those things where, I don't know, you kind of don't want to see someone focus so much on the stock price. And, he's been pretty explicit about it. I think part of the reason he's explicit about it is because NVIDIA has been so dead compared to every other AI stock. And he's trying to say, guys, like, the reason Micron's up, the reason Corning is up, the reason Marvell's up is because of us. The reason Marvell is up literally is because of me, because I said there should be $1 trillion company, but you guys aren't giving me any love. But at the end of the day, he's Jensen, right? And if he's going to want to talk about the stock price, then, he's going to talk about the stock price. So I think his argument is just he views the world in a fundamentally different way. He's not looking at the market dynamics of price to earnings and PEG ratios. He's looking at it. Are we in a new industrial build out or not? And if we are, then obviously all these stocks are probably going to have a multi-year, potentially multi-decade tailwind behind them. Speaking of NVIDIA, as the poster child for it. And that's why these names probably are going higher. And so that's why he wears the leather jacket. That's why he gets to do what he wants. And I don't know if his comments are going to be enough for us to get a rebound today, but obviously it's also like, what do you expect Jensen to say, right? If all the AI stocks fall, especially the ones that he's invested in or that he's promoting, he's not going to say, yeah, they deserve to fall, right? He's going to say these are opportunities to get exposure. And so it makes sense that he said that, but there has been a recent uptick in terms of how much he's been, more explicitly talking about the stock price itself. NVIDIA, right, they're up 2.75%. You got SoFi up about 1.59%. Shopify, is that getting a little bit of a move pre-market? That's up 4%. I think there's a headline on Shopify. The SaaS names aren't really getting as big of a recovery as the software names, as the semiconductor names. IGV is up about 0.5%. SMH, which was down about 10% on Friday, that's up 5%. So you're not necessarily seeing a massive increase in the software names like the semiconductor names, but they did fall pretty aggressively on Friday. So when the market opens, we'll see if those ends up going up or if they kind of stay flat. Put in the chat if you bought the dip at all on Friday, if you took advantage of any of the opportunities, if you're kind of calling BS on this rebound, if you want to see a little bit more pain. We have a bunch of headlines this week. We have obviously the SpaceX IPO. We also have WWDC from Apple. Apple right there at 308. And so, if Apple can introduce an agentic Siri, if we have some more partnerships from Apple and with some of these other companies, Apple was potentially thinking of tapping on Intel to work on some of their next-gen processors. So, I forgot. So you have Intel with Apple, Google, SpaceX, and now NVIDIA potentially partnering to build more chips. I mean, the kind of thesis around Intel is the TSM of the United States is starting to come to fruition with these partnerships. And if we can see it in the earnings growth, obviously that would be more of an argument for why paying 100 times forward is not that crazy. 99.17 was Intel on Friday, 111.60. You're seeing today. CrowdStrike got hit, but it got a little bit more of a rebound. I mean, it was not at the absolute lows, 674 right here, still down from 800. So it took a pretty nasty hit after the earnings. The earnings just weren't good enough for CrowdStrike. We talked about that on Thursday. They were really lackluster for the valuation that CrowdStrike had put up. Broadcom, I don't think deserved to fall 15%. I thought that was kind of stupid. I could see Broadcom easily getting back into the 430s, maybe not the 480s. But then again, if the market's not going to be as nice, I mean, I think Friday was a gut punch to a lot of people remembering, oh yeah, the markets don't have to be as nice as they've been, right? Things can go down. Bitcoin fell below 60,000. Michael Saylor did end up buying some Bitcoin this morning. He sold 32 Bitcoin last week, which is why we saw some of the pain on Bitcoin as the market started to get a little bit more afraid that Bitcoin would be coming down. And today he bought 1,550 Bitcoin for 101 million, along with increasing their cash reserves to 100 million. Now, I am still kind of confused how he's doing this, especially because STRC has depegged from that $100 base rate that it should be at. It's at 95. So if you bought it, you're down 5%, even though you're getting a 12% yield, which means effectively you're getting a 7% yield. And they either have to sell more Bitcoin to increase the dividend, or they have to, or Bitcoin has to go up a lot so that they don't need to do that. And as of now, he bought it at 65,000, Bitcoin's at 63. So it's not at the absolute lows. It kind of bounced from that January support level. But yeah, he probably diluted MicroStrategy to that. That's probably true. They probably did an ATM. I don't know what's going on with strategy and Bitcoin. I mean, there's a lot of weird financial engineering that they're trying to explore, but time will tell to see if this ends up playing out. Are you testing the Hood agentic beta? I have not tested it yet. Honestly, I just haven't even had the time to set it up, but I have a couple of friends who've tested it. So I will hook it up soon, probably put $1,000 in there and let Claude trade for me. But I have not tested it yet. Bitcoin, that is 63,000. SpaceX will be worth more than the market cap of Bitcoin on Friday if they go public at 1.85 trillion. Rocket Lab CEO Peter Beck made the point for why valuation shouldn't matter as much for SpaceX and Rocket Lab.
kind of element. And look, I completely agree. There's some valuations that are completely untethered to reality. But I think, with respect to us, right now there are 2 companies on this planet that have successfully scaled launch to any level of frequency and reliability. And, that's SpaceX and us. So, access to orbit on a regular and reliable basis is rare. It's like extremely, extremely rare. So, when I started Rocket Lab and when I started developing the Electron class vehicle, at one point we were tracking 142 companies trying to do exactly the same thing. 142 companies. And where are the 142 companies? That kind of gives you a sense of just how ridiculously difficult it is. I wish it was way easier. That would make my life way easier, but it is insanely difficult. And when we were raising capital for Electron, there was, the big, show in town was Virgin Orbit. And, Richard Branson had funded that business to the tune of $1.2 billion to do exactly the same thing that, Electron does today. And it wasn't successful. It's not even like if you just pay enough money, you'll be successful. It is like there are so many elements that have to be absolutely perfect and lined up to make a successful, launch business in particular, that it's just incredibly rare. And, anything that's rare, attracts a certain value.
I might have to start saying rare the way Peter Beck says it, because that was that was quite the way to say it. But nonetheless, his argument is that SpaceX, Rocket Lab, these are very special companies. SpaceX IPO running at 2 times oversubscribed, as per sources telling Reuters a couple days ago. I think the SpaceX IPO is going to go very well. I think the $135 listing price is going to get taken out pretty easily. The question is, how much more upside is there after 135? And, put in the chat where you think, put in the chat your price prediction for the end of the day on the SpaceX IPO. I'm going for 180. 180 is my price prediction. Now, either I'm dead wrong and it's going to 250, or it loses 135. But I think that 150 to 180 range, I'll go to the top end. 180 is kind of where I think it's gonna bottom out at. And if that's the case, then that's gonna be a $2 trillion company, a little bit more than $2 trillion, I think, on the day of the IPO. Now, will it hold 180 or 200 for the coming months? I don't know. But in the context of Peter Beck, his argument is, hey, like there's only 2 companies on the planet that can do what we're doing, and it's SpaceX and Rocket Lab. And as a result of that, that's why I think Rocket Lab has achieved at one point it was $80 billion market cap. Now it's at $63 billion, 4.3%. Rocket Lab is down a lot, 150 to 114, but it also went up a lot from 70 to 150 in a couple of weeks, essentially. Up 4% in the pre-market, and that should hopefully be a beneficiary if SpaceX has a successful IPO. ASTS right there, 97, that's up 3.8% as well in the pre-market. Wow, I see a lot of you guys saying 250, 220. It's going to open at 240. Well, theoretically, if it is 2x oversubscribed, yeah, that 135 is going to get taken out pretty quickly, and it's going to be worth a lot more. But that was the argument on Friday for why people thought we had a sell-off, because there's going to be this, this liquidity crunch on all the SpaceX or all the IPOs that are coming out, and I think that could be part of the reason. But I think realistically, again, the reason we had the sell-off on Friday was because there are these opportunities in the midst of market momentum where you take a breather, and that breather in these, I think over the past couple of years in these market environments has just become more harsh because things have gone up and down so immediately that when it goes down, it really goes down. And maybe that will be the opportunity. We'll see in 5 minutes when the market opens if that continues to be an opportunity, or is it the start of something greater? I mean, if we flip red after all this green in the pre-market, it's going to be quite incredible. And if it does happen, that means that this was a complete fake out. But if we don't, then it was just a regular Friday where we had an ugly day. But, you could see a little bit more of a rebound as dip buyers continue to come in. Speaking of dip buyers, Ron Barron, he is buying another $1 billion of the SpaceX IPO the day that it goes public.
Yes. I've given an order for $1 billion. And they said, well, how do you come up with $1 billion? I said, well, the company We now have $15 billion, and the company is valued for 1.25 trillion. So we own about 1.25% of SpaceX. And if you're going to raise $70 billion, and I don't want to be diluted, then we need to have $1 billion. That's why I come up with a number. And there's so many people who are huge money managers, people with 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 1 trillion. They don't own a share. And the people who own, who have $7 or $8 trillion, they own way less than they can. So you have huge demand coming from people who don't own enough and have to own more. And then you also have these indexes where passive investors have to invest in those indexes, whether they like it or not. If they're going to duplicate an index and you have a new company coming into the index, they got to invest in it. So you have demand coming from investors who don't own any and want it, and are large cap growth investors. They have to own it. And then in addition,
so you got Ron Barron basically making the argument that money will flow into this IPO. He's not really making a case for valuation. I mean, I've heard him say like SpaceX could be worth 30, 40 trillion. So if you buy it at 2 trillion, it's still a really big deal. Obviously, he bought the company when it was much cheaper than the current valuation right now. But his broader argument is there's going to be passive ETFs and index funds that have to buy this thing. Now, what the S&P 500 did say on Friday, outside of announcing Marvell is going to be added into it, was that they are not going to be changing the requirements for a SpaceX to get in. So SpaceX will still have to wait a year and will have to demonstrate 4 quarters of profitability to get into the S&P 500. I think the NASDAQ is a different question. The NASDAQ will allow SpaceX to be fast-tracked in, but the S&P 500 committee made it like pretty explicit that they're not going to be changing the rules for SpaceX, which I also think is kind of scaring the SpaceX committee a little bit, because they have been marketing the hell out of this IPO. And, you know, you just see all these different places where they're going. I mean, freaking Jamie Dimon interviewed Elon Musk on Friday in front of 3,500 of the top JP Morgan individual investors. And they slashed their Tesla price target from 175 to 475. So they got rid of the old guy who put a crappy price target on Tesla. They brought in a new guy. And I think it's because JP Morgan knows they're going to make a ton of fees off the SpaceX IPO. So you've got a lot of different institutions kind of capitulating to try to get Elon the level of pump he needs to make this successful. And Elon, if you watch that hour-long interview with Jamie Dimon, he said, you know, outside of a lot of his abstract kind of theorizing about why SpaceX needs to go public, his argument is like, we need money. We need capital. We need capital to grow. And so for Elon, it's very imperative that they make this IPO happen. But you're seeing a lot of the other institutions also come together to try to make this IPO become a thing. And then it's just a question of how much demand is really going to be there, along with how much retail momentum is there to hold on to this thing. It's a Friday. We're going to find out. But it will be a very, very important IPO to see what ends up happening. All right, folks, here we go. It's been 3 days of no bell. It's been 3 days of no bell. But we are indeed back. I am very curious. Can we hold on to this green? Do we end up getting a pump fake? Is this enough momentum? It was the worst day on Friday, the absolute worst day since April of 2025. It was an absolute waterfall down. Hopefully, that was just the one-time event, and maybe we can get a little bit of a rebound here. Monday, June 8th, 9:30 a.m., the stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. We are pretty green, folks. Micron, 9.5% move. That is green. Broadcom, back above 400. CrowdStrike, up 1%. Intel, up 11% based on that news with Google and NVIDIA this morning. That is why Intel is getting some love. Apple, wow, 312 right out of the gates. Apple, 308 to 312. Apple, very close to all-time highs. The max on Apple, I think, is around 315, 317. We're at 313 right now for Apple. Shopify, that's up 4%. Micron, almost 950. Nebius, 3.7% up. They announced a new partnership in the UK for, I believe, another 85 megawatts. And that's what I think is getting the stock to go up. 1.7 billion pounds of investment for 65 megawatts going into 2027. Nebius right there, that's up 3.2%. Micron, 945. Corning, announcement with Amazon. That's why that stock is green. S&P 500 up almost 1%. Full 1% on the S&P. Pretty incredible, given it fell 3% on Friday. So you have almost 33% of that getting back to the S&P. SoFi goes red at 1602, Nvidia 210, BMNR up 5%, AMD fell to 450, AMD now at 481, so not too bad on AMD. That is getting a pretty healthy rebound, 457 to 480. It is down from where it was in the pre-market at almost 490, so you are seeing some red candles, but still up a lot from Friday. T1 Energy, this took a big hit on Friday. That's up 2.59%. Nokia, that's up 1.59%. CoreWeave, that is up 1%. Oh, WWDC is today? Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, so that Apple event's going to happen today. Yeah, June 8th. It'll happen at 1 p.m. Apple right there, 313. So they could make some announcements today that actually would be very important for Apple. And we're going to see when that ends up coming out. Broadcom just below 400. SMH up 4.2%. Meta, are we falling? We are falling. Yo, this is the worst Mag 7 this year, dude. This is the absolute worst Mag 7. Yeah, I don't blame the street for tanking Meta right here, to be honest. And at this point, I hope they take it to 550 and really give us an opportunity. Because if Zucks is going to dilute at these levels, yeah, there'll be demand for it. But that stock's got to go down, right? Like, there's no way he can raise 50 billion or some crazy number at these valuations and the stock doesn't go down. Google also down about 1%. Now, Google's not down to the level that Berkshire got their private placement at. That was at 350. It's kind of stayed in this 365 range. Even on Friday, it only fell to 361. But I don't think Meta is having Berkshire co-sign them if they end up going through with this dilution. Marvell, 289. That's at 290. Is CoreWeave down? CoreWeave is down. It is down, 99. Wow. Okay, so you're seeing some stocks at the open lose their momentum. CoreWeave goes red. ASTS goes red. Rocket Lab, you got a pretty ugly red candle right there from 114 to 111. Still green on the day. Keel's up about 4%. SoFi goes red. Nvidia losing it. She was at 210. She's at 208.40 already. Okay, that's red. Nubank is red. AMD, that is not necessarily red yet. Energy is down. Where's Exxon today? Exxon is up a little bit. Your oil prices on crude are slightly up. Your Blooms of the world are down. Bloom 256. That's down 3%. Did Nebius lose all of its green? Nebesis just lost all of its green. Is this what it was like on Friday? Because I missed the first hour. Was Friday like green and then red, or was Friday just immediate red? Because I woke up at 10:30 and all I saw was immediate red. I don't know if we end up having another Friday, but we are starting to see some of these candles, just even Intel, 112 right down to 108. It was straight dump, full red. Okay, so then today is the opposite. If we do end up going red for the day, it would be green to red versus immediately red. Wow, Microsoft down 2%, 411. That's $11. Dude, Microsoft was 472 last Sunday. Unfreaking believable. They just flipped the narrative on that quickly. Nvidia 208. Nvidia fell almost to 202 last night or on Friday. Let's see if that can hold at those levels. Rivian, that's up a little bit. Disney, that's down. Is Fastly up? Fastly should be up. Fastly up 2.4. It was at 21 a while ago. Oh, I think I have the video of Jensen saying we should be able to buy stock at a cheaper price. Let me just play the audio for you guys. It's 20 seconds. I'll play it right off my phone.
Everybody should be very excited. They can now buy stock at a cheaper price. And it's absolutely true that the future of AI is very bright. It is completely, it is a foregone conclusion that AI will be infrastructure for the world.
What do you guys think about Jensen talking about stock prices as explicitly as he is? Are people bullish, bearish? They don't care. They'd rather him not. But he's been doing it a lot more often than not. I mean, he's kind of sounding like Trump, to be honest, as he's talking about stock prices. You know, Jensen takes me as the type of guy who ignores the stock price and just says, look, The future is AI, and the market can figure out what they want to do with it. But now he's like explicitly saying, no, stocks are cheap. You can buy them. And it's like, that's not how Jensen's very apolitical when it comes to this type of stuff. He never takes a stance, never gets super bullish, super bearish. He just, tries to play his own race. And this whole conversation about equity prices, he's gone completely the opposite from what I would expect out of a Jensen Huang, which is literally to not even care about the stock price just to keep executing. But I don't know. He started to care a lot more. Corey right there, 99. I don't like it. It's desperate. I don't like it. I don't like it. You do it all the time. Yes, but I do it for a living. Jensen actually builds multi-trillion-dollar companies. There's a difference between me saying, oh, wow, I think Marvell's cheap versus Jensen's like, Marvell's going to go to $1 trillion. And it's like, okay, all right. I don't know. Part of me thinks like he's a little nervous that the AI trade collapses. That's what my gut tells me. Just like Trump is nervous that like the stock market collapses, and that's why he says it's a great time to buy. Like part of me is thinking Jensen's a little nervous and he wants to reassure people by telling them, yes, you are allowed to buy these stocks. They are cheap. Intel losing a decent chunk of the pump as well. Still up 9, but it's down from that 113 range. And maybe that's why he's being so explosive about it. Wix was down 10, now it's down 5, so you're getting some dip buyers coming in. Micron still 937. Vertiv, that's up 1%. It was up 3%. Microsoft 412. Is Meta losing it? Meta 584, a little bounce off 580. Yeah, the Google ordering 3 million chips from Intel. That, again, has not been officially confirmed by Google or Intel. That's a report from the information, but that is why Intel's running right here. And good for Intel. I mean, the more deals Intel gets, the more that earnings multiple looks justified. But that is why Intel's up right there. IREN up 3%. IREN up 3% right here. I think that makes sense. The AI trade can be intimidating for sure. And when you're Jensen, after all, it takes a few bad apples to screw it all up. Yeah, I mean, I think Jensen knows that if the AI... See, here's the thing. I don't think Jensen loves that Micron is up 8x in a year and that NVIDIA can barely move 10%. But I think Jensen knows that in order to keep the exuberance and excitement alive, that he has to promote memory companies and Micron and SK Hynix, right? Like at the end of the day, I don't think Jensen wants to be paying the amount of prices that he's paying for these commodities. But he knows that, look, people are going to be more excited about the AI trade if they have companies that they can bet on. And if he can give these companies long-term strategic agreements so that they have more longevity into their growth, then he can probably get cheaper prices because there's going to be more manufacturing. But also there can be more broader excitement around AI. And I think that's what he's tapping into when he promotes all of these companies, even if he doesn't, love endorsing them. But he also knows that he needs their product for NVIDIA to continue growing. NVIDIA right there, 209. Up from 208. It is weird, right, that NVIDIA hasn't taken any stakes in the memory companies. Like, that has been the most surprising part. I mean, they're buying neo clouds. It's like, how, if memory is this important, which it is, we all know it is. I don't think anyone's doubting that thesis, especially not after, the earnings that we've seen over the past few months. Like, why doesn't NVIDIA have a stake in SK Hynix or Micron or any of these companies, if not to signal to the market, hey, we are confident in their durability of growth, and B, we want them to use this capital to start building out new fabs immediately so that, we can increase production. Like, it's always been weird to me that they don't have a stake in the memory companies themselves. I mean, they took a stake in the photonics companies, Coherent, Lumentum, Corning. Are you telling me photonics and optics is more important than memory? I mean, maybe Jensen thinks it is. Corning right there losing about 50% of its pump as well. It was up 10, now it's up 5. Because the neoclouds are customers of theirs? Okay, that's that's fair. That's a fair point. But still, you would think they want to support the broader memory names. U.S. airline fuel costs rose by 78% in April to nearly $6.5 billion. Gas prices are still at around $4.20 globally. July 4th is coming up, folks. I think a lot of people had a thesis that oil prices would drop below 90 or at least into the low 80s for July 4th, America 250. I don't know if we've officially seen that yet. I don't know if we're going to see if that happens. Apple 311. Amid, I full ported Meta at 594. Tell me I'll be fine long term. Well, long term, I do think you'll be fine, but long term might be, years, not months. I mean, look, I think Meta's cheap. The problem is that dilution news caught me off guard on Friday. Like I think it caught the whole market off guard. I think the market was okay with Google doing it at all-time highs. The market's probably okay with Amazon and Microsoft doing it because they have so much CapEx to build up for AWS and Azure. Meta runs ads. Like, even I'm left wondering, what the hell do they need to be raising equity for? Like, just cut the metaverse and that stock will be at 700 tomorrow. It's very simple. What do you need to dilute shareholders for at these levels? Like, how many more GPUs do you possibly need to buy? Like, you guys have figured out advertising. Just keep growing that, get rid of the metaverse, and the stock will be re-rated. But I think they're on this mission to build artificial superintelligence. And I'm like, okay, I just don't know if people want that from Meta. I think they want it from Claude and ChatGPT more than anything. S&P 742. It's just the valuation is so freaking cheap on the company. It's hard to get bearish on them. ASML 1734. That's up 5%. Elon had a really big endorsement of ASML and lithography over the weekend. And so potentially reacting to what Elon said as well about that. Someone at Meta said it wasn't real. That's not true. Someone at Meta said rumors of dilution are speculation, and we will always be very creative when it comes to financing, when it comes to the AI build out. So they did not deny it. They just said it's speculation, which to me means they are speculating on potentially diluting. Obviously, they didn't want to admit they were legit going to do it yet. But I mean, if it happens, I don't know if the street's going to like it. I think Microsoft and Amazon can get away with it. I don't know if Meta can. Microsoft right there, 412. 412. BE is down 2% as well. Okay, I don't know if this looks like Friday 2.0 yet. You're seeing a lot of green candles get faded, but you're also seeing them get faded in a very not aggressive way. Stocks that were up 7%, they're now up 4%, which is, it's a little bit of a fade of the initial green, but it's not bloody red. Nvidia 209, that one's holding that 208 level that it bounced off at. AMD bouncing from 480 almost back to where it was in the pre-market. Does not give me a feel that this is Friday 2.0. Reddit 169. The software names can't catch a bid, sadly. I think most of the dip buying is going into semis. And that's potentially why they were green. Admit that's what happened Friday. Then 10 to 11, we were down a lot worse. Yeah, but when the market opened, everything was red, right? Did we have any bit of green before 10 a.m. on Friday? Was there any hope that Friday was going to be a regular day? Because you guys said it was red pre-market and then red as soon as the market opened. Maybe they bounced back a little bit. Some of you saying no, some of you saying yes. I think it feels like you guys are saying it was red, but it wasn't ugly red. And then by 10 a.m. it became ugly red. I woke up at 10:30, so I guess I woke up in the midst of I woke up when Hood was still 85. And I was surprised by that because I was looking around and I was like, hold on, how the hell is Hood holding? And then Hood ended up going to 79. So it made no sense to me that I woke up and Hood was barely down and then proceeded to fall pretty badly. Hood right there, 83. CoreWeave, 99.72. Palantir, 136.72. AIPCon was great, by the way. It's a good experience of a bunch of interviews coming out. It was super fun. It was just really tiring. And so I think that's why I ended up getting sick over the weekend. Carp was Carp. He was his excited self. I think some of you guys saw his keynote. I got to talk to him for a bit. And, he was pretty excited about the growth that they put up, the level of momentum that they have. And, at the end of the day, he's still pretty damn bullish on the business. He doesn't think anything is stopping with their momentum. It's just the market perception of these software names, once again, not being in the best spot. CrowdStrike right there, 677. Broadcom, 397. Did you see Jensen drinking beer? Jensen has been drinking and eating a variety of different foods over the past 2 weeks in Taiwan and South Korea. So yes, Jensen has enjoyed his time. He was also pretty hot in South Korea, dude. Look at this. This was 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius. Rocking that leather jacket. Trying to deal with how hot it was. But, at the end of the day, Jensen has a massive company that he is upholding, which is basically the future of the stock market. And I think there's a lot of pressure on him. And that's why he's traveling and trying to make sure he endorses all these companies that are part of the supply chain, to continue this momentum when it comes to AI. Nebius flipping green right there, 228. Oh, yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Trump is planning on investing in AI companies this week. I forgot about that. So this headline, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Like, is the United States government really going to take a stake in OpenAI and these other companies, or is this kind of speculation? But this is what Trump had to say about it on Friday.
There's a concept out there. There's so much money and it's so big that there are concepts where pieces could be given to the American public, where the American public essentially becomes a partner with the companies. And I will tell you, yeah, I have spoken to all of them. There's something very interesting about it, where it almost becomes a partnership with the American public. And we'll look into that. We are looking. I actually have a meeting scheduled in the very near future with, did you know that, with all of the companies, and we're talking about it, where the American people can benefit from the success of AI, and by doing that, they're going to like it better.
Which companies in the meeting?
All of them. All the big ones, yeah, all the big ones. They're all coming to the White House probably next week.
Okay, there's two perspectives here. The first perspective, which is more optimistic, is, well, if the United States is going to be theoretically subsidizing all these AI companies with zoning permits, big beautiful bill, data center build out, the list goes on and on and on of all the different helpful things the government is doing to be able to promote AI in the country, data center build out, et cetera, then we should have a piece of that. And as a result, if we're going to be in as much debt as we're in, we might as well take a couple $1 billion equity stake in a bunch of the leading companies. And if they end up doing very well over the next 10, 20 years, then hopefully those couple of billions of dollars turn into hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions over the very long term. And this was kind of the argument that, Bill Clinton made back in 1992, which is we should take the Social Security capital that we had, put it into the stock market instead of put it into treasuries and let it compound. And that money would be a lot greater than it is today if we had ended up doing that. Now, we would have had some ugly drawdowns in the meantime, 2008, 2000, it would have been pretty 2020, but it would have grown long term. So that's the bull case. The bear case is that we are trying to bail out the AI companies, and that the AI companies don't actually have the revenues, they don't actually have the profits, they don't actually have the demand, they don't actually have the economics to be able to become self-sufficient companies that can operate at scale, and that the United States needs to come in and backstop any of their losses by making sure that they're going to be okay. Now, the government has done this plenty of times. Obviously, 2008, build out the auto companies, 2020, build out the airlines. So the government's not a stranger to being able to bail out companies. It's just we don't think Anthropic and OpenAI are at the stage where they need to be bailed out, right? Like, they haven't given any indication that they need to be bailed out. So the question is, does Trump know something about these companies, or do his advisors know something about the health of these companies that potentially requires them to have support from the US government, especially because those companies control the stock market? Like, if OpenAI goes public at 1.2 trillion and falls to like 600 billion, Oscar, by the way, up 5% right here, that's not going to be good for the broader market because there's so much leverage. Because it's not just OpenAI, it's Oracle, it's Microsoft, it's so many companies that have these multi-billion, $100 billion packs with OpenAI that they're just too big to fail. Same thing with Anthropic. And so I think if you believe in the foundation model companies and the broader AI ecosystem, the US government shouldn't have to take a stake in them. And if they do, it should be viewed as more optimistically. But if they take a stake in them for reasons that are less, I guess, pure, they're more beneath the surface, there's something else going on in terms of why they're buying these companies, then it's going to get a lot of people questioning what's going on. Amazon losing the majority of its move today as well, 247. It was at 246 on Friday as well. Bullish Enron. Again, my biggest problem with the foundation model companies is that I don't think they have a path to profitability anytime soon. I don't think compute costs are coming down anytime soon because we have to build a lot more data centers. We're not really making that much progress on building massive data centers. That's why memory prices are the way they're at, right? There's so much supply-demand imbalance here. But the actual usefulness of the models is legit. You are starting to get some cracks in the narratives with the Ubers coming out saying, do we really need to spend this money? T-Mobile coming. So you are starting to get people starting to question a little bit about how useful they are. But at its core, I think those are idiosyncratic concerns. I don't think those deny the thesis. I just don't think they're going to be profitable anytime soon. Just like I don't think SpaceX is going to be profitable anytime soon. Also, this Google SpaceX deal is a joke. It's an absolute joke. So you're telling me Google is going to pay 3 times the amount per hour that it costs to rent a GB300 from SpaceX? They're going to pay $11 an hour for that? As soon as I saw that, I was like, this is absolute nonsense. Why is this nonsense? Number one, Google, for everyone who forgot, has an equity stake in Mr. SpaceX. So it's very convenient before the IPO that Google signs this $920 million per month deal with SpaceX to rent out their compute. That, by the way, can be canceled in the next 90 days. But it definitely makes the IPO look more compelling if Google is going to be paying them $1 billion a month, right? And so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Google is that compute constrained and they need to pay 300% more than what the standard price is to rent out a GB300 from SpaceX, making SpaceX the most profitable neocloud that's out there. But if that's not true and Google cancels that agreement in the next 3 months, by the way, the Anthropic Elon agreement with SpaceX is also not a long-term thing. Elon himself said this is not a long-term agreement. This is a short-term remedy for Anthropic because they need a lot of compute. I think that deal falls apart. I don't think Google's actually going to pay $1 billion a month to SpaceX. So you start to see some of this stuff pop up and you're just like, hold on, this is a little too creative for my liking. But it definitely makes the SpaceX IPO look a lot more juicy. Now, if Google is legit going to pay $1 billion a month for the next 3 years to SpaceX, then that means the compute constraints are so unbelievably massive that the CoreWeaves and Nebuses will easily be $300-400 billion companies. I mean, if Google's really willing to pay that much, you can't imagine how many other companies that are out there that need to pay for compute. I just don't think the smart people at Google would be willing to pay that much unless they had really that much demand. And, it's going to be a question on if that demand actually materializes over the coming months. S&P 743 is NVIDIA down. NVIDIA 208, almost the lows of the day right here. 208.20 is when you see it going a lot lower. But yes, Google does own a good chunk of SpaceX, and they might want to make sure that the IPO is supported. And the best way to support it is not by buying shares. It's by giving people a reason to think of SpaceX as a more diversified business, as a neocloud. That gives Google an exit opportunity potentially on those shares as well. SoFi flipping green, 1630. The 10-year, this was at 4.4 on Friday. Oh boy, 4.53 today. All right, so you got a decent move right there on the 10-year, 4.536%. 10-year continues to go up. ASTS, is that green? Rocket Lab was green. ASTS losing a lot of its steam. I mean, at what price would you look at Cerebras? Cerebras still trades at 80 times sales. So I don't know. But then again, in this market, I don't know if you're going to get it for like 30, 40 times sales. I will tell you, look, it's down a lot from the IPO highs at 380. So if you're really interested in this, I think nibbling probably just to, even if it's buying one share just to get started on the process of due diligence. But you can't say it's cheap. Like, no one can say Cerebras is cheap here. No one can say Marvell is cheap because it's not. You can say Micron's cheap. You can't say Marvell is cheap. Not at 170 times earnings. But then again, if it's going to $1 trillion, like Jensen said, maybe it doesn't matter. But a lot of these names have moved past the stage of being cheap. The only names that are really cheap right now are software names. And then the memory names, because their 4 PEs are just, disrespected so much, I would say the memory names are cheap. But I mean, you can say NVIDIA's cheap, you can say the Mag 7's cheap, but those have been cheap all year, right? In terms of the semiconductor names, I don't think Texas Instruments is cheap. Broadcom's cheaper than what it was on Friday. I don't know if you could say it's like dirt cheap at 43 times. It's definitely a lot cheaper than before. Dell is absolutely not cheap. HPE is not cheap. A lot of these names have just had a massive run. Dell below 400 as well. 395 as that continues to go down. Galaxy, that's up 11%. Amid, are you catching a cold? Not a cold, but my nose is a bit stuffy. Galaxy, that's up 11%. They announced a new data center lease, I believe. That's why Galaxy's up. A little bit of a stuffy nose. I've been sleeping all weekend, dude. I would wake up for an hour, then sleep for an hour. Wake up for an hour, then sleep for an hour. But I'm not sick. I don't have a fever or anything like that. I think I was just like exhausted over the past couple weeks. What about SMCI? SMCI with those margins, I don't think is ever going to be cheap. Now, maybe at 19, 20 bucks after the China controversy, it was more reasonable. But Broadcom did not pull off what a lot of people thought it would pull off, which is have a monster earnings and then the stock surges like all the other companies. I mean, it had a pretty good earnings. They messed up on guidance and then boom. They didn't even mess up. They just didn't increase it. Like, they're not required to increase guidance, but they kept it the same and then the stock collapsed. I think it kind of hurt, everything else as well. What about CoreWeave? I don't think CoreWeave is cheap, but I think the comparison, I think Jose's argument that if you look at Nebius's market cap and their rate of growth, and then look at CoreWeave, it makes sense that CoreWeave should be trading at a premium to Nebius. Now, you might be a Nebius maxi and say that CoreWeave is the worst neocloud in the world and Nebius deserves all the praise, and that's fair. But I know CoreWeave has a lot of debt, but the level of backlog they have compared to Nebius is night and day. And you would think CoreWeave should be trading at a higher level. Now, granted, maybe that's not going to be how the thesis plays out. But below 100, I don't hate this here. Whereas Nebius, I think people wanted below 200 to be, a lot more excited. A lot more excited about it. You can be sick without a fever. That's probably true. I think I've just always correlated being sick with having a fever. But you are probably right. Where is Sandus? This thing, where did it go on Friday? This fell to 1,500 on Friday? Yeah, I mean, dude, 1,500 is not even that crazy. I know it's down from 1,800, but it was at 1,000 a month ago. So a lot of these names, they fell back to levels that we saw literally a week ago. Oh, wow, NVIDIA. Okay, there's your real red candle for the day on NVIDIA. It almost happened kind of all at once right there. 206.20. Does it bounce right there, or are we going lower? CoreWeave just went red. Nebius went red. Google went red, 2% down. Oh, NVIDIA just got dumped right there, dude. Yeah, where's that Quantinium company? These guys, 60. Okay, so their IPO was relatively successful. They IPO'd at what? Basically 60? They're at 60 right now. Even throughout the dump on Friday, the fact that they're holding the IPO price up 7% right here. They got up to 71. Okay, so that's actually a pretty decent IPO price for Quantinium. That's holding. Is it 10 a.m.? It just turned 10 a.m. Are we going to see a slam? Marvell, red candle. NVIDIA, let's see if we lose 206.20. It's at 206.28 right there. We just lost 206.20 for a millisecond. 206.19. That is surprising that Cerebras is up freaking 11%. And NVIDIA is the one getting hit. Micron also, that's up a lot. Well, never mind. 950 to 920, almost within like seconds. You got that red candle. Still up 7% on the day. T1 just turned red. ARM was at freaking 415 on Friday. It's at 346. U.S. deepens role in Israel-Iran conflict as CENTCOM reportedly provided intelligence and air defense coordination. Israeli media states that CENTCOM provided intelligence and aerial coordination support to Israel for its offensive strikes and defensive movements against incoming missiles. This refers to Israeli strikes on military targets in western and central Iran. There were a couple of articles last night that the United States was helping Israel in their retaliation against Iran, even though Trump said he didn't want Israel to attack. So if that's true, then There probably was some intelligence sharing there. SPY 741. Another red candle. Where's VIX? VIX is 4.7% down. Fintech not doing too bad today. SoFi holding on. Hoodie holding on. Hoodie at 85 is pretty nice to see. Obviously with the tailwinds of Trump accounts and the agentic stuff. Affirm, that is green on the day. Duolingo. Dude, Duolingo is going to help my stock draft. I think I'm still in first place. Yeah, I'm in first place by like 4 percentage points. Matt's at 55. Matt's at 58. I'm at 61. Steve's at 51. Tanner's at 12. And then Chris is at 42. We have literally 8 days left. And then the stock draft will be over for the last year. Elf, that's up 8% today. Elf getting some love. NVIDIA trying to hold on to 207. Just trying. Let's look at the heat map for today. Semis are still pretty green. Yeah, semis are still really green today. It's some of the bigger Max 7s that are down. Utilities are down. Communication services are down. Software down. Oh, Tesla. Tesla's making a nice little comeback. 3%, 402. Tesla fell to 390 on Friday. We do have CPI this week, folks, and I think it's going to be really bad. Maybe it's not as bad as it was last time, but it's definitely not going to be good. But I wonder if the markets will be able to say, you know, if the war comes to an end, we can move on from it. Nebius right there, 224. Or if this is, you know, just going to be bad news like it was on Friday. Bloom Energy down 5% as well, as that's taking a hit. Okay, let's see what other macro stuff we have right here. Someone just bought 530,000 of Intel 120 calls. That's on July 10th strike. Netanyahu will make the decision regarding escalation with Iran during a security cabinet meeting tonight at 9 p.m. local time. Time in Israel is 5:03 p.m., so in about 4 hours. I guess we'll figure out if they strike back, even though that's a little confusing because Trump said they've officially to a ceasefire already. I don't know, dude. I don't know what's going on here. Here's a couple of macro credit card data points, and then we'll keep going from there.
Speaking of caution on the consumer, I don't know if you guys saw it. Friday afternoon, there was new consumer credit numbers out, which basically shows how much Americans are borrowing and using their credit cards. David Rosenberg highlighted this in his report. And there is the revolving owned and securitized consumer credit, meaning Americans are relying more on credit. The March-April surge was up $43 billion, Rosenberg said, something we haven't seen since late 2022. Credit card balances on the month went up 11%. After a blowout 10% in March. So it's no wonder that the savings rate has come down. And if you look at what's driving all this, I mean, the real income growth is negative, right? Even in the blowout jobs report that we got on Friday, which was really, really good, wage growth was not so strong.
Up 3.4%.
Correct. And so when you have wage growth high and inflation or low and inflation high, then that's a problem.
Yeah, you're
for the
eating
consumer.
away at people's ability to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's a reason for the Fed not to jump to hike interest rates. If you also look at where the jobs were in that report, we're showing you now.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it could be explained by temporary phenomenon like the World Cup, 70,000 jobs in leisure and hospitality. And then the other two are not so cyclical. Government, that was a local government story there.
Right.
And then healthcare, which we know has been sort of a secular driver of jobs. It's not, manufacturing, construction, they were okay. They were both positive, but it wasn't like some big driver. So, some of the signs would argue against the Fed getting too eager to hike interest rates on these higher inflation numbers because it's not translating into wages and it's not necessarily a extremely robust consumer environment.
It's a good point there. If the jobs are temporary or the jobs are not increasing wages, then where's the argument for a rate hike? Like if the whole reason for the sell-off on Friday, which I still don't think was the real reason, but if that was the perceived reason, which is labor market's hot, inflation's going up, rate hikes on the way. If that logical syllogism gets broken by the first step of the labor market not being as hot as people think, then we could still have the stock market sell off for other reasons, but not because of the potential for a rate hike. I don't think we have to get a cut, but I definitely don't think we got to get a hike. And if that's the case, stocks should at least be stable, even if, they're not as vertical as they've been. Micron right there, back to 926, hit 915 for a second. Trying to come back. SanDisk 1622, Nebius and CoreWeave both going red on the day. IREN, that one's actually green, so that's going the opposite of some of the other neo clouds. Applied Digital, that's also green. And then Cipher, that is also green. Why is Oracle down? Well, Oracle is a very interesting situation. So we have Oracle earnings this week, so this will be an important one. Two things on Oracle. Number one, I think their leverage against OpenAI is starting to be questioned again. Why? Not because of anything OpenAI has said, but because of Anthropic's growth. Anthropic's growth has been so monumental in the enterprise, which is why they've been able to raise at a pretty decent valuation compared to OpenAI. I mean, they're worth about $150 billion more than OpenAI. The reason they got that valuation is because the market is looking at their enterprise growth. If OpenAI doesn't win in the enterprise, they have to win with consumers. And if they don't win with consumers, you start to question a lot about how much compute they can actually pay for. Because again, consumers are $20 a month, some advertising revenue. That's not the type of juicy contracts that Anthropic's getting in the enterprise. And so I think the lack of excitement around OpenAI's enterprise product is making people question whether Anthropic or whether Oracle should be as levered to OpenAI as they are. And then the second reason Oracle is falling is because NetSuite, software, IGV, general IGV sell-off is bad for Oracle. Also, I think Elon becoming the best neocloud out there with SpaceX is kind of making some people question the other data center plays and their computing capacity. Maybe that's a little bit of a reason why you're seeing some of the neoclouds take a hit. I don't think that's really a bear case for them. Palantir right there, 137. Microsoft lows of the day at 411.40. But Oracle at the end of the day kind of is a neocloud. And, they are not the most profitable one given SpaceX is out there. Do you think Oracle could see 160 after earnings? I would be surprised at that because when Oracle was at 160 on April 13th, it was at 135 April 13th. IGV was a lot lower. So I don't know. ServiceNow was like $80 during that time. So if it tracks the software names, I don't think that's going to be the case. ServiceNow right there, 113. I could see it falling to like 180-ish if they have a really bad earnings. But hopefully that's max pain. 209 on Mr. Oracle. Wow. Okay. Sam Bankman-Fried formally applies for a Trump pardon. I made a prediction when Trump got elected. Someone's got to find the clip. I made a prediction that this guy was going to get pardoned. His parents are very well connected. He's got those types of parents. He's got the types of parents where they don't go softly into the light. They're not going to accept a 25-year prison sentence for their son. I think he ends up getting it, dude. I think he gets it. I think he finds that this guy is too connected with all of the inner circle of the Trump crew. I think he's going to get out. I mean, Bloomberg kind of did an article about this a while ago as well. It would be hard to, and this is the best chance he has because I don't know if the next administration would be this friendly to crypto. I think there's a shot. Micron right there, 930. 930. What did I say? Did I get it right? Did I say quietly into the night? Whatever the saying is, you guys know what I'm talking about. What is that saying? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? It's a freaking saying. Oh, gently into the... Did I say quietly into the night? It's a poem by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good light. Okay, the point is, I don't think they're accepting defeat. I don't think they're accepting defeat. Go watch Interstellar again. Yeah, you know what I watched last night, or what I watched over the weekend while I was sick? You guys are gonna hate me for this, but I don't care. I watched The Dark Knight again, and I watched The Dark Knight Rises. I don't understand why people watch different movies. Like, those two movies are the best two movies that are out there. You don't really need to watch that many movies in life. Like, I really enjoyed watching those two movies again for like the 10th time. I didn't have to go to Netflix, scroll through a bunch of movies that I didn't want to watch. Didn't have to look at any reviews. Just watch the same thing over and over again. It was great. It was great. Nokia 1461. That's great. Dark Knight, top 10 movie all time. I agree. I don't even know if people disagree with that. I mean, it's not top 10. It's at least top 15. Or at least top 20, I would say. Netflix, trying to catch a little bit of a bid. The Qs, did we fall below 700 on Friday? Yeah, we did. No, we didn't. We 699.76 we touched on Friday. Bounced up immediately from that. So it stayed there for a second. And then we were able to recover. Here's an update on the Iran situation. And then we'll keep going from there.
Now saying that they have paused attacks against each other, but both are also continuing to threaten that more could be coming if they feel like they need it. So after a series of strikes went both directions over the past day or so, Iran's military now saying it will be suspending operations against Israel. But Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also telling CNBC that it would resume hostilities if Israeli attacks continue in Lebanon. Then similarly, Israel says this morning it has halted its strikes, but Israel's Channel 12 reports that a senior Israeli official says strikes in southern Lebanon will continue at full strength in the coming days. All of that then leaving it somewhat unclear how long this pause in the action might last. But those announcements coming shortly after President Trump posted this morning that both Israel and Iran were looking to do an immediate ceasefire. He says final negotiations on peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in its way. He also said the blockade was remaining in place until any final deal was reached, but that things should move quickly. And guys, all of that capping a very dramatic 12 or so hours. It started with Iran firing missiles at Israel late yesterday for the first time since the ceasefire was put in place in April. Iran saying that was a response to Israeli attacks in Lebanon the day before. President Trump then spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and reportedly asked him not to retaliate toward Iran. He also told the Financial Times that he calls, quote, all the shots. Netanyahu doesn't call the shots. Within hours, though, last night, guys, Israel announced it had struck military targets in western and central Iran. Guys.
Megan, so the president is urging a ceasefire between Israel and Iran and Israel and Hezbollah and trying to make a deal. Is there a deal on the table that is imminent?
It doesn't seem like it's imminent. The president did say in that post that things should be moving relatively quickly, but we've been hearing that from the president for weeks now. We spoke about this in the NBC News interview over the weekend, and all the reporting that we have from both sides is that, yes, while talks might be continuing at some level, we don't have anything new to suggest that anything is imminent, that anything is much further than where it has been. We also know President Trump has repeatedly voiced frustrations now over continued Israeli attacks in Lebanon. And this is sort of the latest escalation of that. And all of this pausing this morning is hinging on Israel stopping that in Lebanon. But according to the state media reporting or the Israeli media reporting, I should say, they're not stopping. They're saying that later this week it will continue in Lebanon. All of this against Hezbollah, of course. And so because that is continuing, that is sort of hindering all of the talks moving forward. And so while we are tracking every step forward in these negotiations, and yes, we do think that there's still discussion taking place at lower levels, there's nothing to suggest that we're much closer, anywhere closer than we have been.
Yeah. May 23rd, the president said a deal was almost final and would be, quote, announced shortly. It's been more than 2 weeks, and we're still waiting on some news on that front.
Still waiting on the deal. Markets, I think, once again have moved on from the Iran-Israel stuff until you get really bad updates like we did last night, which is why Trump is trying to calm everyone down. Like, I think the markets can kind of live with the high oil prices as long as there's not more instability. But the problem is over the last 48 hours, there's been a lot more instability. Nebius, 223, Core 98. And that's why I think Trump has been trying to resolve a lot of the stuff. Trump also did not have the best interview yesterday on Meet the Press. He ended up walking out of the interview after things got a little heated last night.
It was a dirty election.
Mr.
And it's
President,
happening again right now in
never
California.
presented evidence.
It's happening
that the
right
2020
now in
election
California.
was rigged.
Right now, it's look at what's
Where's
happening
the
in
evidence
California.
to that?
It's
The
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in
California. It's no, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with.
That's how they count
You know
the
why
votes
they're
in
doing that? Because
California.
they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
All I
that?
have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen to people, and let's see what happens.
But sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in
Do you
California.
think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a
State
winner?
and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote
They're
in
crooked,
California.
just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
Well, you
continue.
play right into their hands. Then.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play
continue.
right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But Mr. President,
you know why I
you've
got
never
that?
presented
Because you have no
evidence.
credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd.
You
Blanche.
have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
Your
about
elections
you
in
went
this
to
country.
court.
We're like a third world country.
But, sir,
Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and
But
Meet the Press is crooked,
Mr.
and so
President-
is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But Mr.
You're
President,
one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the
traveled
rain with
all.
you.
I know. I
I've sat in the
traveled
rain
all the
with
way
you
to
for an hour,
Wisconsin.
on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr.
A
President,
country can never be
we
great
traveled
with a dishonest
listen,
press.
we
Come on,
traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
So that happened over the weekend. I mean, obviously you could tell he was a bit frustrated, and that's why he kind of left early. I think going into the midterms, we're only going to get more and more of intensity around, how the midterms could end up playing out, or at least how Trump is perceiving the midterms to play out. Bloom Energy right there, 249. I think one thing that Trump is probably frustrated about in general is the fact that the war is taking this long to resolve. I mean, again, I think most people probably realize he went in, thought it would be like a Venezuela operation, ended up taking a lot longer than expected. And then every time he gets close to resolving it, you have Israel that comes in that makes it harder for it to be resolved. And, there were multiple reports last week that he cursed out Netanyahu, and he was just saying, dude, enough is enough. We need to end this. And then over the weekend, you had more attacks, and he's trying to tweet out that, hey, there's a ceasefire. It's going to be okay. So I think at this point, he's getting annoyed because he knows that you need to stop the war. Stopping the war will get oil to come down. Oil comes down, inflation comes down, the stock market goes up, and people stop worrying about gas prices as they get ready to vote in November. But until that kind of happens, the question is, why would people vote Republican? What is that kind of core reason? And right now, you can still say 401ks on the stock market is there because the stock market's done really well. Cerebras, right, they're up 15% on the day. But not everyone fully feels the benefit of the stock market, but everyone kind of feels, the pain at the pump. And I think that's what Trump is trying to get focused on as well. Rocket Lab 112, that's up from 110. CrowdStrike 676. Intel lost 114, has never been able to recover that, but still at 108 as that continues to try to go green. The video for Jensen's talk at Taipei with the financial analysts was just uploaded, and I'm surprised no one's clipped this part yet. This was 4 days ago. I'm just seeing it on my feed. Yeah, I don't think anyone's reported this, guys. I think you guys are getting an exclusive right here from AK Media just because I did the digging for this. I think Jensen just said which stock to buy next. All right, when you guys see this clip, let's see if you heard this before. Qualcomm.
I think Qualcomm's doing a great job. I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, I also think that in order to build chips for smartphones, the software stack is very different. Nobody has a better software stack than NVIDIA on PCs. Period. I can go toe to toe with anybody. So we offer something very unique, and we're quite specialized in that. But for mobile devices, the software stack's very different. The peripherals are very different, and so we're incredibly good here. I don't think we're incredibly good at mobile devices, and I don't think it's necessary. I think they're doing such a good job. Buy their stock. It's good. I spent the whole day selling other people's stock. Yeah. It's.
Has anyone seen that clip? This was uploaded June 3rd. I think I'm just finding it. There you go. Jensen says buy Qualcomm. There it is. I haven't seen anyone post that clip or anyone even post that headline. It might have been hidden underneath the freaking the video. It didn't get as much airtime as Marvell. I command F'd stock in the transcript, and that's what I found on this.
Spent the whole day selling other people's stock. Yeah. It's good. It's good to help other people. We should be happy other people succeed.
Yeah. Jensen, one last one.
It's kind of funny, bro. No one cares. like Marvell went up freaking 40%. No one cares. He literally said buy Qualcomm. Buy their stock. He wasn't even that explicit around Marvell. He's literally saying buy their stock. But this is my point, guys. This is what I'm trying. I'm a Jensen fanboy. I don't love him being this explicit about telling people. It makes it feel like he's a little nervous that the trade can unwind, and he wants to be the number one salesman to tell people to buy these companies' stocks. Like, if Qualcomm's going to win in the age of AI, you shouldn't need Jensen to say to buy their stock. Like, the market will inevitably figure it out, right? It's not a deep fake. It's not a deep. I'll put the link right here. This was so every time they do a GTC, they have a financial analyst day. I was in the one that they had in San Diego. So they do this every time. Now, the one that I was in, he wasn't as explicit about this. Even when I asked him about the software stocks, he didn't literally say to go buy them, but he did think that, people were wrong for selling them. So this one, it's a little bit more explicit around Qualcomm. Okay, so that's what you got. That's what you got for Mr. Jensen. Amit, do you like Trump pumping but not an actual CEO? It's not that I don't like Jensen doing it. It's that it's a little weird. Like, I understand why Trump does it. He wants the stock market to do well because he's judged on the stock market going up. Jensen should be judged on the earnings growth of NVIDIA, not the stock price of NVIDIA. The stock price is a byproduct of the earnings growth, And Jensen, going out there saying to buy this stock, buy that stock, buy that stock, it just makes it feel like he has a vested interest in making sure all these companies go up, which I guess he does because it's all part of the AI build out. Video 207 right there. I don't know. It's just a little weird. But then again, he's Jensen, right? He's going to do whatever he wants to do. Qualcomm 216. Can Zuck say to buy Meta? Can we get some of the CEOs that have not had any stock price movement to the upside? Talk a little bit more about getting some love. I'll see if I can get any other good clips from this this GTC summit or this financial analyst day. We should be able to get some more stuff about him talking around NVIDIA and the broader AI trade. I think CPUs is going to be the core thing. Yeah, I just command F CPUs. He said it 85 times. Yeah, there's a lot of CPU stuff. Let's take a look at this part real quick.
My sense is that we're going to sell a lot of CPUs for data processing. We're also going to sell a lot of CPUs for EDA and simulation and things like that because single-threaded performance is so important. And so we're not going to go after every segment, but there's some segments of the CPU where NVIDIA has a lot, really strong position already, and we could add a lot of value. We'll probably sell CPUs in those markets. What does it all translate to, Joe? I'm not sure. But all I can tell you is this. The CPUs of the past and the CPUs of the future, the design center is different. It's reasonably different. It's arguably different. And so we're going to go after this $0 billion market we call agents. Agents is a $0 billion market because 6 months ago it didn't exist. Today, agents has made it possible for us to have useful AI, and now it's driving enormous demand. But Vera was built for that, and its time has come. And so these computers here are built for the future. And I just happen to think that this future is pretty extraordinary, and it's worthwhile for us to re-architect everything for it. So I'm not exactly sure how big it's going to be, but my sense is that it's much, much bigger than any number that we can put on right now.
All right, we got Jensen's endorsement of the broader CPU landscape that's not slowing down anytime soon. ServiceNow 114. Markets are basically flat, folks. A little bit of green that we're seeing is holding on. And if it's not, you're seeing some of these names flip red, but it's a very slight red, like Oracle down 0.5%. Nothing as dramatic as what we would be thinking. I think we have a new Israeli attack in Lebanon. Israeli drones struck a car near the Lebanese Red Cross Center. This is the third Israeli strike in Lebanon since Iran's last warning. Israeli army radio citing military sources. The army has received instructions from the political leadership to continue launching attacks in Lebanon. Okay, if that happens, I don't know what Trump's next move is going to be here. I mean, Trump did say last night, I think he was interviewed by the Financial Times. He was like, I call the shots, Netanyahu doesn't call the shots. And then an hour later, Israel attacked Iran. So, I mean, it's one of those things where the market, once again, is going to have to figure out how to resolve this. Oil's not spiking, though. That's the good thing. Oil's barely up today. So even in the midst of some of these attacks, the market's not really getting upset about it with oil right here. Man, what do you think about VSH? It's the only MLCC stock in the US. Okay, so ironically, you bring this up, I've been doing a lot more due diligence around MLCC. VSH, I did not come across, so I've not looked at this one yet. $7 billion company, I can put it on the list. Year to date, makes sense. Well, it's up 265%. But Jensen did talk about MLCC technology along with a variety of the other parts to the supply chain in Taiwan, which is part of the reason I started looking into it more. And the fact that it's one of the only stocks in the US that gives you exposure to it, and most of them are in Taiwan and Korea, is probably why that stock is up as much as it is. Qualcomm, a little bit of green right there. And then ServiceNow, big green as well. But again, a lot of these names of the supply chain, they've basically shown themselves to be some of the only names that can help supply this AI build out, which is why you've continued to see this green. Elon, speaking of the AI build out, commented on memory. This is another reason I think Micron's up, and basically he made the case for why the terafab needs to get into production.
You know, we try to. So, what's the limiting factor? And the limiting factor, what we see as the limiting factor is being able to make chips, both logic, memory, and packaging. I mean, it's worth noting that there's not a single high-volume computer memory fab in America right now, zero. There's one being built in Idaho by Micron, but that will not reach volume production until, I believe, 2028. And there's some being built in New York, but they are in, I think, 29 and 30. And this is a tiny fraction of the memory that's needed. And in fact, even if you take the best case assumptions of the memory makers and the logic makers, it is not enough to meet the demand that is anticipated. Which is why you're seeing, you know, stocks of like Micron go to, I think, 1.2 trillion, or some quite high number. So there's just clearly a need for AI logic, memory, and packaging, AI computers essentially, that is far beyond what even the best case assumptions of the existing fabricators can do, and that's why we need to do the terafab. Yeah, it seems like essential. Otherwise, there will not be enough chips.
Now, again, terafab is Elon's project to build, what is it, like 1,000 gigawatts or something? I think it's even more than that. Oh, no, 1,000 terawatts of capacity. So I think it's like 100,000 gigawatts. It's a lot of compute that Elon wants to build with the terafab. And I think that includes memory and a variety of other components that, there's a traditional supplier vendor relationship. Elon wants to disrupt that and become an encompassing full-scale stack because of the amount of compute that he thinks we need to bring online. And so when you hear someone like that talk about compute, you start to remember that there's a lot more ambition that's out there. And Jensen's probably not messing around when he says, we need just so much more frequent compute. Mick, can you negotiate a Middle East deal? Call it the Amit Accords. Dude, I've been ready to negotiate this deal for the past 3 months. I legit don't know why they haven't called on me. I could have got this shit done months ago. But they want to go with, Steve Witkoff and the professional negotiators. I'd be able to get it done. Iran 57. That's green. As that goes up. By the way, who's applying for the SpaceX IPO shares? Because it seems like they are giving a bigger stake to retail. So I think people might actually get those shares at 135. Maybe not all of them. Like if you apply for 100, maybe you'll get 10, which might be even too optimistic. But I do think there's more people that are going to get a chance to get shares. Question is going to be if it opens at 180, who's buying it at 180? And I don't know if that is going to be the price to buy. Cypher, that's up 5%. IGV, that's up 1% as well. I'll buy them in 6 months at 75. Dude, do people really think it's going to go like to the 70s and 80s? Because I could see that happening, but that would be a catastrophic failure of the IPO. Which just feels like, I don't know, it'd be too aggressive. But if it does happen, then I think that would be definitely a different opportunity. 75 would be, what would the valuation be? That would be like, that would be, let me do the math. That would be, yeah, that'd be putting it around 1.4, 1.3, 1.4 trillion. No, maybe even a little less than that, around 1.2. I mean, also, did you guys see the estimates from JP Morgan? This is why I think JP Morgan is colluding to pump this freaking IPO. I mean, their estimates on SpaceX and the way they're justifying the valuation right here is kind of stupid. Like, they're basically saying it's going to like grow adjusted EBITDA by 800% in a couple of years. It's like that's not, they're not going to be doing $6 trillion of adjusted EBITDA anytime soon, given the market cap is only 2 trillion right now. I'm going to try to get the exact estimates, but they put out a sell side note that was just, yeah, they're assuming 2.7 trillion in EBITDA and 3.4 trillion in revenue, and they're going out all the way to 2040. Like when you have to go out 15 years to justify the valuation today, I don't know. A little aggressive. That's also assuming Tesla can actually, or Elon can actually pull off those revenue numbers without a SpaceX Tesla merger. Are you concerned about CPI this Wednesday? I think CPI is going to be bad, but I don't think it's going to be worse than what the street's already expecting. I mean, they've pretty much accounted for it to be pretty bad. CPI is on Wednesday, right? So the expectation for CPI on Wednesday, looking at it right now, is it Wednesday or is it Tuesday? I think it's Wednesday. Looking at 4.5. Okay, 4.5%. It's not going to be what we want to see. but maybe oil coming down will be the key that changes it. Tesla right there, 403. Broadcom at 396. Broadcom is looking very attractive here. I'm not going to lie. The problem is, look, the problem with buying any of the semi stocks right now is, was Friday a one-off, or is Friday a start of a more broad summer sell-off, which would be very normal if it happens in the summer? And Broadcom, you'll be able to get at 330. Nebius, you'll be able to get back at 160. SanDisk, you'll be able to get back at 1,300. Because I think Friday was a wake-up call to a lot of people saying, oh, these stocks can just completely get decimated like there's no tomorrow if sentiment shifts, which is also part of the reason I think Jensen's trying to calm people down over the weekend, because he wants people to not lose the excited sentiment that they have. And so these prices look way better than where they were at the very top. But if Friday wasn't a one-off, these prices are going to get a lot better. It's just, again, how many times have we said that this year? And then boom, people stepping in by the dip. Micron back at 940. And maybe that doesn't easily happen again. I can't stream the WWDC event, guys. Apple literally, we've tried it for the past 3 years. They ban your stream immediately. I don't know why they're so upset when people stream their conference, but yeah, they are not going to let me. I wonder what they're going to announce, though. Like, that's actually the most important thing. I doubt they're going to announce anything around freaking foldable phones yet. That's not going to be an event. Agentic Siri is going to have to be really important here. If they don't announce an update to Siri that's meaningful, I would be pretty upset. But I also think Apple shareholders are not going to take it lightly. Glasses, I don't think they're going to talk about glasses. What if Apple becomes a neo cloud, dude? I mean, they have a lot of cash, right? They're the only Mag 7 with actual cash. What if they say, you know what, we're buying up a bunch of GPUs and we're renting them out? That would be hilarious, bro. That would be freaking hilarious. That would be the top. Wouldn't that be funny, though, if Tim Cook gets on stage and says, so, we're acquiring 100,000 GPUs and we're building a data center to license out. Stop saying Siri. Even if I trigger your phone Siri, it shouldn't be able to do anything because it's useless. I asked it the other day for the weather, and it wouldn't even give me the weather. I'm like, bro, like, this is the one thing that I expect you to be able to do. Give me the freaking weather. Like, it is embarrassing how this thing doesn't work. All right, going to the Knicks game tonight. I am not. Trump will be there, though. In Madison Square Garden, they put out a press release that says if you're going to be there, you can't bring anything. Like, you can't have any bags, anything like that. Like, there's like security is going to be crazy there tonight. And you have to get there 3 hours before the event. So New York's going to be wild today. But Trump will be there. And I don't know, man. I think we win. I think this championship is ours to win. We just got to continue doing what we're doing. Zeta right there down 0.5%. Redwire, that's up 5.6 as well. Look at Steve in the chat. Foldable phones. Steve just goes with the wind, bro. Steve just last week it was, oh, I'm definitely leaving Apple for Google. Now it's foldable phones. I got to buy one. I have been consistent for the past few years. The glasses are a flop and they will not work, and the world will not adapt AI glasses. I'm sticking to that take. I've had this take since before the Vision Pro came out. I've been on this island with this take for a while. And then number two, I think foldable phones are stupid. I don't think they're going to work. I don't think they're going to scale. I think Apple's wasting their time focusing on a foldable phone. And I think we don't need new hardware. I think OpenAI and Meta's push for new AI hardware and these pendants and necklaces is all nonsense. I think it's literally wasting time, just like the metaverse is. I'm surprised that OpenAI is actually working on it, because OpenAI, they don't really have that many options left. They're failing in the enterprise, not failing, but they're definitely not winning like Anthropic. Consumers, like, yeah, they're winning with consumers, but consumers don't have any money. Sora was a failure. Like they kind of have to pick some at robotics now. They're like, oh, we're getting to robotics. Like, okay, good luck. Good luck getting into manufacturing thousands of robots, especially when the AI is going to be the same between Grok and Gemini. Like the AI will be commoditized to the point where every robot will have a frontier model that's fantastic. Like it's all going to come down to engineering and manufacturing, which I don't think OpenAI has really any experience in doing any of that stuff. So I am so bearish on AI wearables, but I am bullish on AI software. And that's where I think Siri can win. I don't think the glasses are going to work, though. I really don't. I don't think it's going to be a thing. Man, why do you like Keel so much? I don't like Keel so much. It's a very small speculative position for me. I just think two things. They have a lot of data center capacity, 2.8 gigawatts. I think eventually they get a deal with one of the hyperscalers if we're as compute constrained as we are. At a $3 billion market cap, I think that can get up to a $10 billion market cap over the next, call it, couple of years. I don't think it's that crazy to see this thing double from here, if not triple, if they land a lot more deals when you look at the market caps of some of the other neoclouds. Number two, their neoclouds are suited for Vera Rubin in particular, not for Grace Blackwell. So that's why I think they're even more optimized to be able to get a data center deal. And then number three, Leopold has 38 million shares of it. So it's a small speculative position based on the idea that they have enough capacity, they have capacity for Vera Rubin, and that you have some heavyweights in the stock already. But having said that, if all the neoclouds get hit, if the semis get hit, then obviously Keel's going to get hit as well. ASML 1745, that's actually having a great day, up 6.3%. And that's, I think, one of the best semis of the day. Are you requesting SpaceX shares? I requested 50 shares. I don't know if I'm going to get any of them, but we're going to have to see. We will have to see. If XAI is selling compute to Google, it doesn't mean that Grok isn't using it. Yes. There's no one can say Grok is winning or XAI is winning if they're literally licensing out their compute. The reason Elon built Colossus is because he realized he needs a lot of compute for XAI. If they're selling that compute to Google and Anthropic, they don't need that compute anymore, or they don't need as much of it. So yeah, XAI is probably not doing the best. But granted, I think all of us kind of figured out a while ago XAI was not going to be amazing. Like, it's just really hard to compete with GPT and Anthropic. So, yeah, I think we'll kind of let it play out. SPY 742 of 0.65%. Okay, what else do we have? What other major headlines for today? Israel Defense Minister Katz threatens that any attack on the northern settlements would lead to an attack on Iran. Israel rejects Iran's warning not to hit Lebanon. Parliament Speaker of Iran, we have disrupted the equation of a ceasefire on paper and its repeated violations in the field. As long as you lack the genuine will to build trust, Iran's response will be exactly this. And this was a similar tweet that the Iranian parliament speaker put out before they attacked Iran or Israel yesterday. Dude, I wonder when this thing breaks. If they just say, screw the ceasefire, we're going back and forth. Because right now, Trump has kind of tamed them down over the past 24 hours. Not really, but he's like kind of tried. If the ceasefire just straight up breaks and they go back to war, at some point that's got to affect oil, right? And if that affects oil, that's why the dip today that's being bought, it's like, okay, I kind of get why the dip is being bought. But I also am just like, you actually get some really bad headlines around Israel, Iran. This dip should not be getting bought as aggressively today. Now, granted, markets ignoring it like they usually have. They didn't ignore it last night. Last night, they did not ignore it. The only reason we kind of calmed down is because Trump put out those posts about the ceasefire. But last night, things were a bit uglier. SPY right there, almost up 1%. Can NVIDIA hit 300 this year? You know, it's funny because at the beginning of the year, my price target at the beginning of the year was 220, 230. And then as the earnings came out in March and then recently in May, I was like, there's no way the stock's going to be stuck at 220, 230. Like, there's just no. And my thesis back in January was that it's just too big of a company. And I should have taken my own advice and bought smaller companies. But I thought NVIDIA was just so safe. And then I got the earnings in February and I was like, okay, 220. There's no way in hell this thing trades at 220. And now I still feel the same. There's no way in hell this thing is stuck at 220, 230. But then you look across the board and you're like, well, these smaller companies like Cerebras or Micron, those are the ones getting the bid. And maybe NVIDIA does end out the year at 220, 230. And we don't see 300. But time will tell on if that one absolutely plays out. Mint Leopold does not have keel in the latest 13F. Check the 13F yourself. So this is the 13F that I'm looking at. And in this 13F, he does have a pretty decent amount of keel. So I don't know which one you're looking at. This one is 38 million shares. He bought 19 million shares, I should say. He increased the position by 12 million shares. He also has Hive in this, which just had their earnings. It has about 3 million shares in that one. He has NVIDIA, he has Cipher, he has Corning as well, he has Coherent, SMH, Intel, TSM, obviously was very early to Bloom, T1 Energy, about 10 million shares of. He has a lot of puts to hedge his positions, which is normal. SanDisk, he's had that for a long time. Nebius, most recently, 12 million shares. So from my understanding, he does have this. But that's based on the 13F that I'm looking at. Is that a deal this morning we got with Nebius? From Peter, KO Digital links 10-year multi-megawatt AI infrastructure deployment agreement with Nebius. Did that happen today? I did not see that one. We saw the UK deal with Nebius. Oh yeah, just now. Oh no, that's part of the UK deal. Okay, that is the UK deal. That's what I thought. So KO Data in the UK, 10-year infrastructure deal. And that is why you're getting a Nebius pump right there. He does have CoreWeave. He has a lot of CoreWeave. He has all the neoclouds, and his argument is simple. In my opinion, his argument is we are compute constrained, and that's what Jensen's been saying. If you think we're compute constrained, then boom. I know the business models of the neoclouds aren't the easiest to digest, but look, Google diluting by 80 billion, that was a wake-up call to me last week as well, that either Google executives are stupid and they have no idea what they're doing, or they are some of the smartest executives on the planet and they realize that, I mean, they need more money to build out more compute. And if that is the correct assumption right there, then all these other companies are probably going to benefit from it. Meta right there at 590 as well. Man, I didn't think you want to buy any SpaceX. If I get it at 135, I'd be happy at that price. I mean, if it pumps up to 200 or something, I might even flip it that day. I just don't think I'm going to buy it on the open market. But if I get it at that 135 price, it's probably going higher than 135. Like, that seems kind of inevitable. But buying at open market is a bit tough. Broadcom, almost 400, trying to get back there. Trying to get back there. Galaxy making a nice move today, up 17%. That one had a big deal over the weekend. Tesla 404. All right, so that little bit of red that we saw about 20 minutes ago, even NVIDIA bouncing up from 206, that's getting kind of denied as you're seeing a bit more love come into the markets right here. Steve Eisman, he had some thoughts about the SpaceX IPO. Here's what he had to say about it earlier this morning.
Kind of funny. It's there's some asteroid mining going on in this sci-fi show on Apple called For All Mankind. It's a central theme, but I think the probability of asteroid mining happening anytime soon is pretty low. But I think what is probably most important in the prospectus is how capital intensive SpaceX has become. So if you go back to fiscal year 2023 and you compare revenue to CapEx was only 42% of revenue. And in the most recent first quarter, it was 215% of revenue. And that's because back in fiscal year 2023, SpaceX was not in AI. It was just in Starlink and,
so it's not
and
even
space.
That's so hard. It's the AI.
It's the AI
compute power.
that is incredibly capital intensive. And Grok, with all due respect to Elon Musk, is not a world-class AI company. I don't think anybody speaks of Grok as at the leading edge.
No, but the compute power that they are building has even players like Anthropic.
No, I understand. I understand
paper.
that, but what you're talking about is an unbelievably capital-intensive business.
So not like the software company.
It's not like a software company. It's so capital. I mean, I think the most important news last week was the fact that Google was raising $80 billion.
Right.
And
even though it's got a ton of cash flow.
But if you're going to spend when it spent $90 billion last year, it could handle it from its own cash flow. When it's spending $180 billion, it's got to raise capital, and not just capital, stock. And there were rumors that Meta is going to raise capital, Microsoft is going to raise capital. The whole tech sector is being transformed because it's so
from an asset-light
business to an asset-intense business.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would just point out is, despite the incredible sums of money that are being spent, what's being produced in terms of LLMs and agentic AI, which is great, is not really differentiatable. There's not that much difference between ChatGPT. It's very commoditized. People are switching constantly from one to the other. There are no moats. So for all the money that's being spent, what's being created, it seems to me at this point, is a commodity.
So why do you think Berkshire Hathaway stepped in and took $10 billion of that Google?
I have no idea. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, look, Google, there's a lot of other reasons to own Google.
I agree. I still don't understand why the hell Berkshire did that. Like, I mean, they $350 is not the most attractive price to pay for Google. That's basically where it was before earnings. So I'm still confused why they agreed to that. I guess they wanted to buy more Google and buy it at a 5% discount than what the prices were offered at the day of the dilution offering.
Well, other than AI, but there's no question in my mind that the business has become capital intensive, no moats. And the other thing that's happening behind the scenes is that until now, companies have been charging for tokens way below the cost of tokens. And that's actually starting to change. Microsoft's GitHub is now charging actually for the tokens. And if you go on the Reddit boards, you're seeing that there's a lot of pushback. So it's going to be very.
Question whether the business can survive once
I don't know about survive, but
or thrive, maybe I should say.
It's going to be very interesting to see how heavily people are going to be using AI once they get actually charged for the actual cost of the tokens.
Andrew's got a question too. Andrew.
Hey, Steve, I don't disagree with you that right now XAI is behind in terms of relative to these other LLMs or even the possibility that they all become commoditized. What I don't understand, though, or I don't understand about your take on all this is, to some degree, SpaceX right now, in terms of getting things into orbit, getting to space, is a monopoly. It's a monopoly power that ultimately will be able to charge, at least for some period of time, monopoly rents. I don't know what kind of multiple you put on monopoly rents, but when you think about the prospect of, and even if they don't have monopoly unto itself, the idea that they may be 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of others once others even get into the same competitive zone, whether it turns out to be, I think, your expectation is not going to be a good investment. And that's the part that I'm trying to understand. I found it's never been a great bet to bet against Elon.
I'll grant you all that, but if you look at
and that he seems to find new ways he finds new ways constantly to make money, whether it's the Google deal or the Anthropic deal. he may ultimately buy Tesla, put Tesla inside the thing. Maybe that'll. I mean, I don't know.
Well, let me address it. If you again look at the S1, the TAM, the total addressable market, is defined at 28.5 trillion. 85% of that TAM is in AI. So even if everything you say about SpaceX and Starlink is true, the entire company is being bet on AI in terms of its future, not on space and not on Starlink. Those are his words, not mine.
I mean, once again, I think Andrew's right. It really is going to be a question of Elon's capacity to get the street to be more excited about what will happen with the long-term prospects of SpaceX. But will institutional investors be as excited as retail investors? Speaking of retail investors, we got some new stats, folks. These are the top 5 companies via inflows for the month of May that retail ended up buying. Some of these names probably will look very familiar.
Targeting about 30% of its $75 billion offering to go to retail. That cohort may be behind some of the recent volatility in the equity markets as it sells recent winners to free up cash. Recently, retail investors have been chasing the upside momentum in semiconductors, hardware, and AI power names. Micron alone has seen $6.5 billion of net retail flows in the last month, helping
Micron, NVIDIA, Tesla, SanDisk, AMD. Those were your top 5 net retail single purchases over the past month. Micron takes the cake with $6.5 billion. Then you got NVIDIA, which hasn't moved as much. Tesla, which has also been relatively flat. SanDisk, which has had a big move. And then AMD. Oh, by the way, speaking of AMD, guess what stock? I kind of gave it away by saying, speaking of AMD, but guess what stock is now a top 10 stock on Robinhood? It used to be Netflix, and now it's AMD. You got Apple, NVIDIA, Ford, Tesla, Amazon, Palantir, Microsoft, Google, Meta, and AMD. So AMD has officially entered the top 10 assets on Robinhood. Obviously, after their earnings, stock went from basically 270 to 500. A lot of people in retail, which use Robinhood, own AMD. And so kicked out Netflix, and AMD is now a top 10 holding on Robinhood.
Drive that stock's 80% upside. At the same time, U.S. equity levered ETF assets have reached an all-time high of more than $175 billion concentrated in the NASDAQ 100, as well as semiconductors. BNP Paribas believes it's not a coincidence that the NASDAQ's worst day in over a year, last Friday, came a week before the biggest IPO of all time, and it may continue. The firm says, quote, selling flows in recent winners and levered products from retail to invest in SpaceX could be very large, according to BNP Paribas. The firm hypothesizes that retail plus passive flows into the IPO could be about $50 billion. If retail sells out of levered ETFs, that can create an even more disproportionate pressure ahead of the IPO, and that volatility could become even more exacerbated afterward. SpaceX options and levered ETFs list the following week, and then in the weeks after that, the company will start to be included in various indexes. So when you combine SpaceX's tiny 4% float plus passive and retail flows, and then these options and levered ETFs, you can see a situation where SpaceX's performance, either to the up or downside, becomes more pronounced and has the capacity to bring the rest of the market along with it, guys.
So look, retail has the propensity to really take a stock higher. I think that's been proven true over the past couple of years. I think that's also part of the reason why Elon's like, all right, we got to let retail get involved, because they're going to hold on to it. They're going to keep up with the story. They're not going to worry about price targets or analyst upgrades or downgrades. They're going to believe in it. And as a result, they have capital. Also, retail is up a lot on other stocks, right? Like if you bought Micron at 500, you're up a lot, which means you might be able to trim some of your winners to buy something new, like a SpaceX, which is potentially part of the appeal for people to get access to a new IPO. For those asking why Ford is in that list, Robinhood gave Ford to a lot of people when they joined the app in 2019. Robinhood had like freaking 18 million people sign up in 2020 during the GameStop saga. So they gave people a share of Ford when it was like $5-6 as like a reward to sign up. And I think people just haven't sold it. And that's why Ford continues to be in the top 10. Oh, wow. We got some updates on Leopold. We were talking about him recently. Okay, situational awareness assets have jumped to about 20 billion, sources say. It was 5 billion last time. Situational awareness gained about 270% this year through May, Wall Street Journal. Anthropic investment now is about 20% of situational awareness's assets, as per sources for the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, this is why, you know, his investment in some of these smaller companies is a bit more interesting to me, like a Keel, because, I mean, the guy has called a lot of these AI names correctly. Dude, he started with 250 million. It was 5 billion last update. Now it's at 20 billion. He's got to be the best hedge fund this year. There's like no other hedge fund that's got to be outperforming it. In fact, I think every other hedge fund is like doing quite bad compared. I mean, he's at 270%. I think most hedge funds are barely doing 10% this year so far. So obviously betting on the AI names has, you know, worked out really well. Now, granted, he has a ton of puts that he bought probably to hedge back against some of his gains, but even with those puts, you would imagine still seeing a lot of gain. Wow, Marvell trying to go back to 300. That S&P inclusion, Street liked it, 297 right there. As that continues to get more of that green. All right, folks. I think that is it for me. I will be back on the close. We're going to have a special guest on the close as well. And that guest is going to help be able to talk a lot more about data centers. We're getting some more subject matter experts that have reached out to be on the show. So I don't think we have any earnings today. Nothing too crazy. Should be relatively chill. So we'll have a guest come on. Yeah, we have no earnings today after the close. And we'll try to get a little deeper into some of these broader topics around AI, get some more updates and thoughts. And I think we'll keep going from there. It is not Steve, although Steve will be live very soon. I do want to leave people with this video that I saw on Friday. It has some profanity. So fair warning right now. If you're somewhere where you can't hear profanity, then you can mute the stream. But this is this video right here. I have never had the right time to play it. I wish I was live Friday, but this video on Friday probably would have hit the spot, given what we saw, what was happening with crypto.
Fuck crypto. You don't need the anxiety. Before you bought the bullshit fantasy coin, your life was good. But then you made some money and became greedy. Now the bullshit coin is fucked. And nobody can tell you when it is going to be unfucked. Even the motherfucker who convinced you to buy the bullshit coin, who told you that it is going to be the next big thing, that motherfucker is nowhere to be found. You are on your own. And all you can do is cry about it in the shower. And hope and believe that your bullshit coin will go up in price again. So that you can sell it and make some money and buy some more. And then get fucked all over again. That is crypto. Fuck crypto. You don't need...
I mean, did that video not hit the freaking spot on Friday? Like, I've seen this video a million times. If you're in the crypto world, you've seen this video plenty of times. I'll leave the link right here in the chat. But on Friday, when Bitcoin was at 59, I was like, okay, that's like that video. Yeah. Every single thing you knew about crypto, that video encompasses for why it kind of sucks. But there you go. We'll get through it. Hopefully we have some more institutional buying coming in. I do think Bitcoin at these levels is definitely more attractive than it was earlier in the year. Hopefully it kind of keeps pace with the NASDAQ. But the fact that we didn't lose 60, we lost it for a couple minutes and we bounced back, I think is bullish because that's a sort of multi-year support line that it's holding up. All right, word of the day. Word of the day. Why are there so many S's in this word? And so many U's? I've never heard of this word before. Susurrus? Susurrus? A soft whispering, murmuring, or rustling sound. Yeah, this word looks sus, dude. What is that? Before the announcement, a susurrus of speculation moved throughout the market. I'm going with susurrus, even though I think it's susurrus, but I'm going with susurrus. Let's see.
Susurrus.
Dude, I should have freaking went with my... Oh my gosh. I had it right. All right, whatever. Susurrus. That was definitely the more intellectual way of pronouncing it. But susurrus is what it looks like. All right, that's what we got. I will be back on the close, and we will keep going from there. Rick, thank you for the super chat, man. Appreciate it. Hope you get better soon. Love from Taiwan. Appreciate you, Rick. I'm feeling... honestly, doing the market open was good for me today. If I just stayed in bed and slept, I feel like I would have been worse. So happy I got up. Happy I'm here. And yeah, sorry for missing Friday. I just sometimes the traveling kind of gets to you. But we're back. I drinking some electrolyte, getting some more water into the system. So I think we should be good this week. All right, I'll be back on the close. We'll have some special guests. We'll talk more about what's going on. I'll try to dive through this Jensen financial analyst Q&A as well, because the fact that that Qualcomm clip wasn't posted means that people probably haven't gone through this. And so I'll try to see if he said anything else that's super important. And then we'll keep going from there into the market close. What should we say to Steve? That's a good question. Mamba says this is how Chris Mateo feels about crypto. What do we say to Steve? I don't know. What do we say to Steve? What's a joke that Steve's been on? Yeah, Susurrus. That's what we should say to him. Susurrus. That's what we should say. He's going to have no idea what that means, but there you go. I think he'll be live in about 20 minutes. That's what we'll say to him. All right, folks. Thank you. I'll be back for the market close. We'll keep going from there, go through the rest of these headlines, and we'll keep going. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys in a few hours. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.